Friday, wherever you happen to be. Let's jump into another action-packed, drama-filled, and non-stop drag-out tech news around the world, American style, because now that the Americans had their beauty sleep, shit's gonna get crazy. The European time zone when the Americans are sleeping, it's educational
Gets
and
cultural.
it's
Gets
culture.
cultural.
It's definitely cultural. It's diplomatic.
Tyler,
Yeah,
Tyler, can I say something first?
yeah.
Salvini, that's a very nice sari, Salvini.
Thank you, Cheryl. I wanted to match you today, so
Thank
I did it
you.
for you.
Looking good, and everybody's looking good. What a beautiful crowd, as usual. We're gonna invite Ramen up, and he's gonna not accept it as for tradition, just tradition at this
Let's
point.
send him like double invites,
I
triple
know,
invites.
you and me both. But boy, I'm still reflecting on his letters to the Harvard Business Review on their errors and their admission of such, and then the journalist blaming it on the editor for the miswording, and yeah. But that's
Justin, he's the scholar. He's
yeah,
the gentleman and the scholar.
yeah. You know who we need to ping into the room is our friend from Austin, ATX, Paul, to get an update on the Tesla plant to find out when the Cybertrucks are coming off the line. So I'm going to ping Paul in. And while I'm pinging Paul in, if everybody would do the same, ping in anyone you think should be with us today. We're going to go into all kinds of tech from around the world.
Cybersecurity friends.
Oh my
I'm sure
God!
that's going to come up again.
There's a new one. The top headline right now out of Ireland. The Irish government just got hacked. So we're doing political tech, crypto, fintech, green tech.
Yay, Victoria.
China, India, Africa, VR, medtech, AI, to name but a few. So take a second and ping in a friend, because that's what we do here each day. And by the way, if you're new, welcome. And all of these beautiful smiling faces on stage, we join together at least once a day, most of us twice a day. And you can see our schedule by clicking on the title of the room and joining the Tech News Club, which you're most welcome to do. And you're most welcome to jump up on stage your damn beautiful self and show your smarty pants to the whole class by just simply sharing a headline from your part of the world, either geographically or professionally. That's the foundation of what Tech News Around the World is really all about. But what it's evolved into is this brain trust on stage of so many disciplines and geographies that enable us to dissect the news in a way that you probably have never seen before, and we can't get enough of. So yes, let's do it as usual. I'll go first because, as I was just saying, this Irish government, the Irish Health Service shuts down its IT system after a significant ransomware attack that is having a severe impact on health and social care services. Boy, doesn't this sound quite familiar to the ransomware attack that just happened in the US with the pipelines. And also a significant ransomware attack that also had severe impact on energy and gas stations providing gasoline to cars all along the East Coast. And this is being widely reported by everybody, most notably by the BBC. And I'm just going to dig in here and get a little deep. A cyber attack on Irish Health Service computer system is possibly the most significant cybercrime attack on the Irish state, a minister said. Goes right to the core of the Irish health system. However, he also said that it is not espionage. Interestingly, the health service has temporarily shut down its IT system to protect it from further attack. Well, that's probably a good move. Mr. Smith, who is Minister for Public Procurement and E-Government, said it was an international attack. He added, these are cyber criminal gangs looking for money. Well, Jesus, Wally, this starting to sound awfully familiar to the Colonial Pipeline attack. And then he's quoted as saying, what they're attempting to do is to encrypt and lock away our data. Oh, my goodness. That is precisely what the Colonial DarkSide hackers did, and then try to ransom it back to us for money. Well, I'll be damned.
Tyler, I
yes.
have additional information.
Well, please tell.
The thing is that I have a few white hat hackers that actually have a honeypot somewhere,
Okay.
on some planet,
Okay.
and where they claim to sell ransomware solutions and software for that and services surrounding that. They have had a surge in the number of requests for their products.
And what are they doing exactly? They have a fake honeypot?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a honeypot. It looks just like the real thing, but all it does, it collects statistics and addresses and such.
And they're having booming business?
Yeah, the number of attempts to actually try to purchase or doing inquiries of how the scheme works and so on has doubled over the last week.
Does that mean the attacks on the honeypot have doubled, or people are they selling?
No. This is a sales platform. It's actually WooCommerce in the bottom, where they have examples of random schemes they've been running before at the success as they claim, and now they attract people to try to purchase the services, very much like the ones that they took out the pipeline guys.
Yeah.
Go on, done speaking.
Yeah. So, as we said before, if there is, who is the Australian lady? And by the way, there was an Australian cyber security person, and like yourself, I know
She hasn't come by for a long time.
she hasn't. Her name was JJ.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ping her in because that's what we do here. Let me see if I got JJ here. We'll try and ping JJ in. And but this is and I'll ping in Jane from Hong Kong. This is just way too similar in the approach, the methodology of the DarkSide attack. And the DarkSide attack, just for context, was just revealed about 24 hours ago that they got paid a ransom of about $5 million in Bitcoin. And that surely doesn't set a good precedence if you want to stop this behavior from happening now, does it? And here we are 24 hours later, and an Irish medical system is being attacked in precisely the same way by holding the data ransom. And that's exactly what they did in the case of the Colonial Pipeline. It wasn't that they were holding the pipeline itself hostage. They were able to get the pipeline back on. And so why pay the ransom if the pipeline's back on? Well, it was because it was all of the data that they had encrypted and were holding hostage that was so valuable, kind of irreplaceable, obviously, or they wouldn't have paid that ransom. But amazing, and this will no doubt continue to happen. And so a couple of other important developments directly related to this in the past 48 hours, as Justin dove into yesterday. And you can remind us, Justin, the Biden executive order around protecting critical infrastructure against cyber attacks like of this sort went into play in the U.S. And similarly, one of the largest insurance companies in the world, AXA, made a big announcement that they will no longer be responsible for paying these ransoms. And that's not part of the coverage packages that they offer, because they see the writing on the wall that this shit's going to get crazy in the next few years, starting now. As you as predicted, folks, like if you start paying these ransoms and you don't have a good backup strategy, this is going to become a very huge issue indeed. So stay tuned. We can predict right now, and I'll bet a Bitcoin my own damn self, we will see another one of these easily within a month, probably within another week. So let's see.
Wow, you're bullish on the cyber terrorists here.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, we just had one. It was only a couple days ago. They got paid. It shows that this methodology is paying very large dividends, and so you're going to get a whole bunch of people using this DarkSide 2.0 platform to try and do similar things. Because Justin, living on in Washington D.C. and and people who live in big cities, $5 million is a nice payday. But imagine you live in Ukraine, where you can retire for the rest of your life on $5 million. So just to give context as to, yeah. Well, I mean,
you can probably live pretty comfortably in the U.S. on $5 million too. But just to your point, Tyler, it's not only this is happening to critical infrastructure in the United States from a government perspective, right?
Right.
It's happening to our public school systems. And for everybody outside of the US, our public school systems need funding. They are severely underfunded for a lot of reasons. And teachers, for example, they don't make a great salary, but they also have to go in and buy school supplies for their students. So that just kind of goes to show you the state of our funding. That being said, these criminals target school administrators and people who aren't as secure as these critical infrastructure facilities. And they're even extracting millions of taxpayer dollars from them because at the end of the day, you kind of got to pay. So, I mean, it's a really big problem. The executive order will hopefully do some stuff. But Tyler, I'm with you. I think the only way to do this is to really increase our offensive capabilities. And if we do have concrete information that it's an outside group, and let's say Russia's giving harbor to that outside group, I'm not saying to cyber attack Russia. I'm saying open up diplomatic lines. We don't want to start a war with a nuclear power, but there needs to be some type of accountability here.
So Justin, you're in DC, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm talking about how long it could be before we see another ransomware gang attack, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, breaking news here from AP: DC police victim of massive data leak by ransomware gang. Richmond, Virginia. The police department in the nation's capital has suffered a massive leak of internal information after refusing to meet the blackmail demands of a Russian-speaking ransomware syndicate. Well, I guess my prediction is just I was a little bullish, not bullish enough, perhaps, Justin. Experts say it's the worst known ransomware attack ever to hit a U.S. police department. The gang, known as Babak Group, released thousands of the Metropolitan Police Department's sensitive documents on the dark web. A review by the AP found hundreds of police officers' disciplinary files and intelligence reports that include feeds from other agencies, including the FBI and Secret Service. Ransomware attacks have reached epidemic levels as foreign criminal gangs paralyze computer networks at state and local governments, police departments, hospitals, and private companies. They demand large payments to decrypt stolen data or to prevent it from being leaked online. A cyber attack last week shut down Colonial Pipeline, the nation's largest fuel pipeline, prompting gas hoarding and panic buying in parts of the southeast. Yada, 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 yada. Wow. That was less than 5 minutes.
Is this a result of the ransomware as a service?
Correct. Yes, by Eastern European, Russian speaking, and that's been now duplicated in many of the reports, is the tool itself is unable to be used to attack sites that are written in Cyrillic alphabets, the Russian alphabet, essentially. And the speakers, the people involved in this are Russian speakers and are a mix of Eastern European and former Soviet bloc and maybe even Russians. And that's why I'm saying Ukraine, because Ukraine notoriously has some of the best hackers in the world, actually. But if you get into that universe. And well, here we are again, golly Wally. It's only been about 3 minutes, and
well, Tyler, I'm pleased that happened, because otherwise, in maybe sort of 29 and a half days, we might otherwise have been reading headlines like cyber attack traced to coconut resource in
yeah, some crazy American in Thailand hacking someone just to not lose a Bitcoin.
Not lose a bet.
Yeah.
I want to add some nuance on that, Tyler.
Please do.
So we've been talking about the ransomware escalation and the cybercrime as a service paradigm that a lot of organizations within the criminal aspects of Russia and alike are starting to develop, actually more along the lines of an e-commerce sites than actual criminal behavior. But one of the things we've discussed more is when organizations go to pay these ransoms, they could actually be held accountable in terms of different legal jurisdictions around funding terrorism unknowingly. So when you pay a ransomware attack, you don't know what that money is being used to fund. So there's every possibility that you could be absentmindedly funding terrorism.
Ouch.
Can I hop on one more thing?
I see ransomware as terrorism if I take it all the line.
Yeah, well, but to your point, it's like it's the quote unquote, no casualty financial weapon of terrorism in a way, right? To do inflict even potentially more damage. That's the worrying bit, right?
I wouldn't say it's
Absolutely. And
necessarily no. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to just quickly say, yeah, that the companies that pay ransomware contributions, they are then up for potential legal penalization for effectively funding terrorism. So it's not just the use of that money itself and the criminals that benefit from it, but if it is used and found to be used for an act of terrorism, the company that paid that ransom could be held accountable in some way.
Would the actual ransomware attack itself be considered terrorism? So it's automatically paying it is a violation? This is Eric, over.
That's a question, Justin. I have to imagine that that was part of Biden's executive order in some senses, kind of reclassifying these things in a particular political way that would allow for bigger fangs and bigger teeth on behalf of the government to go after them.
So there's actually no, actually.
Wow.
But I will read you what the thing was. It was the executive order requires agencies to encrypt their data, update plans for securely using cloud hosting services, and enable multi-factor authentication. I can't read this morning. An extra security step, which we know is, and then also there's going to be a clear cyber incident review group. Basically, think of when a plane crashes or a train crashes, you have the NTSB, which goes in and determines why it crashed with an after-action post-mortem.
Right.
Now there's going to be one of those for cyber. But to your point, Tyler, this is crazy and mind-boggling, and people on stage will not believe this. When these incidents happen, two people are called in. The FBI to kind of go through and try and catch criminal actors, and then also Department of Homeland Security, CISA, an organization that I did work for. And CISA kind of goes in and works with the private sector companies to somewhat do that after-action report, but also to help sweep for continuing loopholes or continual bad actors and vulnerabilities that are still in the system. Now, CISA, which is part of Department of Homeland Security, has no subpoena power. So if they were to go in and find something additionally wrong, they would not be able to subpoena records from ISPs, from other companies to be able to further investigate this on their end. So that goes to your point, Tyler, that in the US, essentially our laws and the way that we handle cyber attacks just aren't up to snuff and don't exist because it hasn't become an epidemic to the proportions that you have so rightly
until 48 hours ago, right? Yeah, they are now, and that's what I'm saying. I imagine one of the next steps will be Congress will pass some kind of legislation that gives authorities bigger teeth and bigger punishments to disincentivize this kind of behavior.
I'd assume so. That's what we do. We don't do enough, and then we tend to do too much.
Exactly.
That's the way of legislating.
That's the American way, folks. Yeah.
Justin, Tyler, can I ask?
Yeah.
What are the thought? What is this brain trust's thoughts on like the United States Cyber Command?
They're good. They're really good.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of is Israel versus U.S. versus I would put U.S. right up near the top. Yeah.
Yeah. So just more teeth and more funding to them. Is that
I mean that's the information side of it. The teeth side is another part, right? Like a whole being able to, once you locate them, the legal frameworks of forcing them to the real problem is I will almost bet money, again, here's another Bitcoin that I'll bet on, the folks behind DarkSide will get caught. It almost doesn't ultimately matter because that's, like, as they're saying, they're just the platform that others are utilizing, similar to the examples of like the Pirate Bay, and then you had all of the users of Pirate Bay, and the music industry did go after users of Napster, which Cal can comment on because Cal bought Napster at Best Buy. And Cal, you'll remember when the record label was trying to stop people and trying to stop Napster, they focused on the people who were doing the file downloading, because there wasn't much you could do to Napster itself, in a way, right? I mean,
No, exactly. No, that's how they completely invalidated the whole movement, right? That they scared the crap out of people, at least some people.
Right. So you got to do two things. You got to try and decommission the platform that they're using. In this case, it's called DarkSide 2.0, and the people who made it, of course, everyone's going to be upset at them, but even more so the users of it. And you need to do things that will really disincentivize them, like the record labels did to the Napster users. The people who are actually using Napster to do illegal stuff of downloading copywritten content. So so it's a tricky mess, and the problem is that if it is Eastern Europeans, or we have to look up a map really quick of countries that don't have
Extradition
treaties
right?
with the U.S.
Yeah.
Which I don't think Belarus does. I don't even think Ukraine does. Can somebody dig that up? That would be a really interesting data point, because almost assuredly these folks are smart enough to know to go to those places to commit these things first. And that's precisely why, I mean, and I'm not accusing Snowden of anything. The reason Snowden is in Russia is because so he won't be extradited back to the U.S., and that's why he chose to go to Russia to some extent. I mean, he actually didn't mean to choose to go there. He got stuck in the airport in a layover, spent many days in the airport, in fact, until Putin let him enter the country. But Russia doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. Otherwise, Putin would have to hand him over. Can
I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
So right after September 11th, people will remember there were those bizarre anthrax attacks, and there was that theory going around that this was actually a well-intentioned person inside some lab somewhere trying to warn us to be more concerned about. Could someday in the future, could we be looking back at this period and go, thank God these attacks took place, because someday we're going to be at a war with a superpower, and having things way more carefully locked down. I mean, this is essentially the fire drill. I mean, so in a way,
rehearsal. Yeah.
Could this work out? The rehearsal, right? Isn't this potentially extremely valuable? I'm just thinking out loud about.
Could they get much worse? Yeah, to an extent, and in the same way, COVID is a rehearsal for a potentially much worse future pandemic, which is why I tweeted, and I'll retweet again, the Sam Harris's recent 3.5-hour special edition podcast called "Engineering the Apocalypse," where he is waving red flags high and wide about precisely this point. And he says exactly those words, that this is the best rehearsal. COVID has been and by the way, every interview that Bill Gates has done in the last year, and he's done hundreds of them, you cannot find one where he doesn't say COVID is a fantastic rehearsal for something, and then wink, wink, because there's something much worse that is likely to happen. That part he whispers very softly, but he does say very loudly that COVID is a fantastic rehearsal, and it could have been much, much, much worse. So yeah, I mean, both points are valid.
Kind of a starter pandemic.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a rehearsal to figure out where the weaknesses are in the systems, and at the same time build up the infrastructure necessary to build a stronger defense for the inevitable stronger pandemic, which is now going into place. It's a combination of the mRNA and the distribution of vaccine fabrication facilities around the planet, so that we can make enough doses, millions of doses around the world in different locations, to save from all of the shipping, which you really can't do. You need to manufacture in many different geographies around the planet to service the pandemic from spreading. But that's what's going into place as we speak, and in that way, COVID likely will save as much as it has cost millions of lives. It will likely save tens of millions of lives on the next pandemic. So it's
if we learn our lesson. So what is it that policymakers should be doing about these cyber attacks that will leave us more protected against a serious adversary? In a God forbid future war.
Yeah. Well, I agree. You agree.
More money.
Yeah.
So just to really quickly outline it, giving federal agencies more power to go track and trace who these perpetrators were, just like Tyler said. Additionally, spending more money on the ability for federal agencies to update their sensors, not only to detect vulnerabilities, but really more so to detect in a breach immediately. There needs to just be some more money spent to this. And then additionally, people always want the quick fix, but there is no silver bullet here, right, folks? So where the most money can be spent is in luring the top talent, not to U.S. Cyber Command. We have, trust me, folks, we have the top talent there. We need the top talent throughout the rest of the federal government. We need to make it more lucrative or more, at least, possible for top talent from these schools that are graduating with computer engineering and software degrees to go into the federal government to update our systems and really make us on the forefront of our defense.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, Justin, you know what? I think you would agree with me on this. I think they just need to stop running the fucking government on Windows.
That's part of it. Here's another part, and to combine both points about defense and COVID and tech. Here it is, right here. BBC, second biggest headline in the tech universe at this moment. BBC reporting a peer-reviewed study finds UK's NHS contact tracing app reduced the second wave of COVID in the UK by roughly 25%, averting 600,000 out of 1.9 million cases at the end of 2020. The NHS contact tracing app had a significant impact on lowering the spread of coronavirus in the UK. Now, my point is, in saying that, that contact tracing app, holy shit, that's a tongue twister.
Tongue twister like crazy.
That's what Boris did.
Yeah, the contact tracing app is in itself a signal of how tech savvy a government is and a country is, and how useful that is, and how implemented and how smart and how useful it is. And in this case, they used tech to reduce, 600,000 cases. Okay, that's great. And hopefully they can learn and improve on that greatly. The US, by the way, by example, you had Apple and Google do something truly unprecedented where Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, and Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, get together in person for the first time, in a decade to open up their APIs collectively so that people could make contact tracing apps on both Android and Apple's ecosystems that would be interoperable. That's the unprecedented part, by the way. Mm-hmm. And nothing became of it in the US. So it wasn't a barrier due to the handsets. So the fact that America couldn't get their shit together in any kind of way and avert any kind of cases like the UK did here, as reported by the BBC just now, that they saved 600,000 and the US wasn't able
Tyler,
to do
this is going to be one of those that we have to go into, I think. Well, not now necessarily, but there's been Shirley can relate to this. There's been a lot of cynicism around what the government's actually done, what they've spent, and how effective that contact tracing was. So I'm curious about why they've put this out there. I haven't looked into there may be a placement of this particular one. This is one of those. So yeah, I mean, we just don't want to take it at
what I would simply suggest is Korea did have a really good contact tracing. Some countries did have good contact tracing. Many did not, and it's not. What I would love to see, and I know that governments are very mindful of when they are ranked versus other governments on different metrics, like freedom of speech and who has the highest freedom of speech, who's making the most unicorns. Who's, because I work with the team in Sweden who's focused on making more, getting more investment for tech. And we rank ourselves, we look very closely who our competitors are in this regard. And I meet with many governments on that particular point. And I know other governments are watching Sweden and how we're able to get a lot of tech investment money from tech investors. So I know that governments watch these rankings of these kind of reports. I would love to see a ranking of who used tech most effectively in reducing COVID. For contact tracing, that's one report. For distributing vaccines, that's another report. And expose the winners and losers and then learn from the winners. Get them on the record. I'll get them in here. Well, let's do interviews with them. Justin could do interviews with them. Let's celebrate the people who used and battled COVID in the most intelligent ways possible. So that's how we can learn as well. And then because right now it's all very nebulous and smoky about no one is really clear how to even learn the lessons of COVID even just yet. I mean, there's some learnings that are shaping up, but on the tech front, I would love to see this become much more crystallized and utilizable. Anyway, moving on. There's other headlines here. Starlink is now being, as we talked about yesterday, that I said, I think in this time zone yesterday, that people in the northern hemisphere are starting to receive their Starlink units and testing them out. And sure enough, the editor, Neelay Patel of The Verge, just got his unit, and he just posted his review saying that it's nice hardware, yielding moderately fast, very inconsistent connection, but has a line of sight issue with even a tree able to block the signal. Well, Neelay, come on, you're supposed to be a geek, dude. Yeah, trees can block satellite signals. That's precisely why we put the satellites up in the fucking space, so that they don't interfere with trees generally. I guess he's speaking.
Never trusted Patel.
Yeah, come on. But I'm going to tweet out this article against my better judgment, so just because it shows the best photograph I've ever seen of the hardware. And I'm tweeting this out from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, which you can very easily find at TNATW. And I know that lots of you in the room are now following the account because, my gosh, we're up to over 700 followers now. We're gaining maybe about 100 per day, and which is great because I'm getting, by the way, I just have to toot my own horn here. I am now receiving the best tech headlines from around the world into my inbox from everybody in this, which is so fantastic. And everybody's tagging TNATW when they find a good tech article, and I get to see all of them and cherry pick the best ones and share them with you here. And Dirk's ex Franz just sent in one very relevant to our last conversation that apparently Toshiba France was also just hacked by DarkSide just a week ago. So thank you for that extra context, Dirk. And but what we do is, if you find a good article, please do tag our Twitter account, TNATW. It'll come in the inbox, and we'll like it and even retweet it out during this program here, as I just did this article from The Verge about the Starlink. And the point that they want to make is they mention, it's $499. It promises 100 megabytes per second download, which that's actually plenty good for anything anyone's doing these days for the most part. And 20 megabytes per second upload, also, yeah, pretty much sufficient for anything you'd want to do. And of course, the best part is you can do it from, 1,000 kilometers deep in the Amazonian rainforest, assuming you're not aiming it at the trees, of course. And or deep into the Sahara, or on a boat in the Pacific, and this is potentially game-changing stuff. And what I like to fantasize about when I think about Starlink is, of course, all the entire world will now effectively have access to the internet, and which, by the way, a surprising amount of the world still doesn't have internet access, and that's fantastic for those places that don't have it, of course. But it also does something else, which is, now that we talk about remote work and working from home, okay, yeah, most people are realizing I don't need to pay rent in a very expensive capital city anymore. I can live in the countryside. Yeah, well, guess what? You don't even need to live in the countryside anymore. You could live on your own goddamn private island, right? With your own solar-powered water pump and your Starlink, and grow your own food. And by the way, that's what I'm doing. So, except that I had to lay a 3-kilometer fiber cable, but other than that, yeah, Starlink is nice, because now I could, rather than I could do the real remote private island thing, and anyone else can as well. And by the way, Thailand has about 1,000 islands that they have no use for, and Burma has about 400 tropical islands.
Wow.
That they don't know what to do with. So the race is on, my friends.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in America, right? Like, the government won't allow you to just live off the land without paying them somehow, some way, right?
I don't know. In the U.S. context, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure you can't live here without if I remember correctly, you have to be paying something, some type of utility to the gut. Like you can't just live here freely.
Well, that's
So
You can
that's
be
one.
off
Yeah.
grid. You can
yeah.
be off grid
You
in the
can be off
US.
grid.
You just pay state tax. It depends on the state laws.
Yeah, you'll have.
Right.
That's a good point. You'll pay state tax, but here's you won't have to pay city tax, right? Here's the interesting thing about the concept of living on the grid and off the grid. Now that I live off the grid, and I have for 5 years now. And it's not nearly as well. It does take an adjustment period because you're constantly dealing with your own water supply, your own energy supply, and it takes an adjustment period. And once you adjust to it, you're fine. But you do start to realize that humans, until yesterday, in the in the annals of history, we lived off the grid until 100 years ago. Everyone, the whole planet. For 99.99999% of human history, we lived off the grid. And it's only relatively recently, in the last 100 years, that we have been living on the grid, and we're getting more and more and more and more on the grid and more dependent on the grid. And I would like to, and I often between my friends jokingly refer to living on the grid as living in a zoo. And there's wild animals, and then there's domesticated cats and dogs, and then there's, the zoo or the circus. And living in the grid is a bit of you're dependent on that grid, because when the power goes out on that grid, you don't have any control over what happens. And we saw this in Texas when that frost, came down and caused all kinds of havoc down there in Texas. So these environmental extreme episodes are going to be accelerating, as are the fires in California, yada yada. And they ran out of California's having rolling blackouts now every summer, and the electric company PG&E and SDG&E, all the California power providers are even saying, "Hey, expect some downtime next week." And it's like, what the hell am I paying you for, right? And so I would just encourage people to start considering this because it's going to the costs are going down month by month, year by year, noticeably. We talk about that here. Dan in the other time zone often jumps in and gives us updates on how the price, when he's in the room now. Welcome back, Dan. On the consistently dropping price of battery storage, energy storage through lithium batteries, which is what I use, and solar panels, etc. But it's all becoming very doable. It's becoming more and more doable by the day, and I would encourage people to think, take it more seriously as time goes on. And that's the beauty of Starlink, is now you can really open people's mental horizons as to the real possibilities. You've even got people doing the hashtag van life thing, where they buy a Dodge Sprinter, Mercedes Sprinter vans, and throw solar panels on the top and lithium batteries on the bottom and a little shower inside, and they're gone. That's full off-grid living, and that is very doable. And there's hundreds of YouTubers who are monetizing it because people are fascinated by that lifestyle, and they're making decent livings just documenting their van life solar-powered lifestyles. And it gets crazier because the Tesla Cybertruck, Elon has said he's trying to figure out a way to add solar power to that, and camping mode they just announced about 2 weeks ago, where you can use the power from the battery in the vehicles for all of your needs. And I can tell you, this is kind of soft breaking news. Internally at Tesla, they are working on the van version of a Cybertruck, where it'll be a solar powered, fully remote lifestyle van, where you'll have these cascading out solar panel roofs that become like a canopy when you're parked, that collect enough juice that you could no longer really need to even charge the goddamn thing. You can get enough charge out of the solar panels on the device itself, and that's when you've got a complete freedom, because then you don't even need the goddamn recharging grid system.
Yeah, you'd have to be parked a lot of the time, though.
Correct.
Your park to driving ratio would have to be massive.
You're right. You need to charge it throughout park it during the day, charge it up during the day. It would get you a few hours per day at night. Yeah, that's correct.
Can I ask a question?
I mean,
because I lived on my whole family lived on a motorhome for a few years. If you Google Ben Tristan motorhome, you'll see a crazy bloody thing. Yeah. But I'm guessing in Thailand, you're at 23, 24 latitude above the equator, something like that.
Yeah.
So up here in the UK at like 53 latitude, the problem is that the winter, it's really hard to get through the winter. We'd love to be fully off grid.
Yes.
And the crazy thing is, to even start the off grid process, we've got to pay our network to upgrade our transformer so that we can export more power, unless we go for a full kind of different system that's not as economical. So yeah, I'd love to do it. It's just Dan's got to tell us how we get through the winter.
Well, that's the beauty. Well, hang on. That's the beauty of
that wildlife is already under big strains of just humans moving more into wildlife, and this also generates more exposure to new pandemics. And this would be a huge problem because there is already very little, if any, untouched wildlife. And then the thing is, if everybody would live that way, are you still truly off the grid? I mean, because then just the density just gets more dispersed.
The grid is the definition of the city's system of consistent water and power. That's to clearly define the grid. Yeah. And you become very dependent on it because your payments when you go to any store to buy anything and you're paying with a credit card and not cash, what happens when the power goes out and you can't buy anything when in a cashless society like Sweden is completely cashless. And when the power goes down, they don't know what to do with themselves. Right, that's being overly dependent on the grid, overly domesticated. You're a bear in a cage at a circus at that point. You can't even eat anymore. So that's what I'm talking about. Is it's something to be mindful of as we kind of get over reliant on the grid as well. I can paint you even far worse dystopian cases of being over reliant on the grid than being less reliant on the grid.
Tyler, do you use the
and I wanted to respond to Ben. Ben, the beauty of the van life thing is you don't ever have a winter when you have the van life thing. You intentionally avoid.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
It's cool when we lived on the motorhome, but now
you
we've got
still
a
rely
house.
on other people producing your food. I mean, if you drive around in your van, you don't really have realistically the time to grow food, to grow hemp, to make your clothes, and so on. So you're still dependent on the grid.
That is an important point, Christian. The other thing we felt after a few years of living on a motorhome is actually you do it to feel totally independent. I mean, in the end, we felt totally dependent because we were totally dependent to get fresh water, although I guess we could have collected it. It's not really practical. We were very dependent to get rid of wastewater, and we were also dependent for fuel because at our latitude, there's not really enough sunlight, especially through the winter. Dan, is there a solution to storage of power through the winter at higher latitudes?
Yeah, we talked about it before. You can overbuild wind and solar. So let's say in wintertime, you're only picking up, let's pick a number, 50% of what you normally have. And then, of course, you might have a cloudy day and you're down to 25%. Well, solar will be so cheap that the cheapest energy solution would be build 400% more solar than you need on a sunny day in the summer. And therefore you'll have baseload power almost all the time, and then the batteries you need for overnight and for those times when it's really bad would be minimal. I think estimated 30 to 90 hours of batteries. So it would, and that would not only be the green solution, but it's also the cheapest solution. Not quite yet because we're just assuming that the solar continues to drop the way it has, and so later this decade, it'll be so cheap that even compared to any kind of natural gas or coal kind of power, it would be cheaper. And of course, it's super cheap when you're doing utility scale. We're talking about your own little home. It's going to be a little more expensive, but still obviously far cheaper than anything else you could do, and it gives you the energy you need. So, yeah, I think. By the way, speaking of camping, there's if people are interested in this, for the Cybertruck, a company, I don't know the company's name, but the product name is Cyberlander, Landr. There's no E at the end, Cyberlander. And they have a collapsible living unit for the back of the Cybertruck that is very cool. It includes a bathroom, and it collapses down and then folds out and everything. And take a picture on it. Cyberlander, cyber with Landr at the end. So yeah, it's gonna these gee, if you're now when you're on your own,
female voice.
You need a lot of.
Can I jump in for one moment?
It's going to be a different thing when you're on your own,
But all of this is not scalable for the population. Like, this is probably a nice lifestyle for a few, But this is not scalable. The reason why we have time to sit here on Clubhouse is that agriculture became so efficient and at such a big scale, so that not 90% of the population has to be a farmer, right? And all these other things produced that we buy is just cheap because it's produced at a high scale. So to be cheap, so we can use our money to do other things than just buy supplies for survival. And I don't think we can change that
But
fact.
Katerina,
I'm excited about
the large scale agriculture farms you're talking about themselves have become roboticized. So the food
Yeah,
goes
And
to
Dan, to
that's
your
the.
point,
We have
but I think the
Lalitha.
important thing
Lalitha's on
about the
stage. Dan, 1 second. I've just got Lalitha on stage. You sounds like you're in the game, right? Robotic.
Yes. So Katrina is absolutely right. The only reason we can enjoy this kind of lifestyle is because we are experiencing the benefits of economies of scale and doing things on a large scale. While I also I see the appeal of off-grid living and it is important, but I think off-grid communities are more feasible than off-grid individual homes, and we are trying to most large-scale ag is already mechanized, and it's just a short step from mechanizing to automation, and it is possible. The tech is there, but we still can't get the price right.
Yeah, my point is the van life living.
I don't.
Oh, sorry, your mic cut out. Go ahead, Lolita.
Lalita, we can't hear
I
you.
think your mic is broken, Lolita.
Connection.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So currently in my farm right now, we're trying to figure out a way to spray herbicide to control weeds. Normally, this is done by hand. It's very manually. If it's done manually, it's like extremely, it's a lot of people. There's no cost, but it's very easy to do with like a machine learning component or a vision system. But it is still expensive. And what we have right now is cheap food, and cheap food means cheap energy. But unfortunately, all our ag right now is fossil fuel based. And I want to go back to what Dan said about increasing the number of solar and wind. And at some point, I feel we I mean, at least at the rate of population, at least till 2050, after which I believe there will be a depopulation event. I think it's better we look at nuclear rather than solar or wind because that is inevitable. No matter what kind of discussions we have around it right now, and we kind of skirt around the topic, nuclear is the future. And there's nuclear
Let
micro.
me play the sound file for you. Where's the Rumble file? Hold on. Yeah, Dan's going to take issue with your theory.
By the way, I'm not
I
against
totally
nuclear. I
agree.
think nuclear is.
Nuclear microgrids is the future. There's no way around it. I mean, there's no way around to sustain the whole population and a growing population without nuclear. And Bill Gates actually funded developing a system that we can recycle and reuse all the nuclear um, trash we have laying around, and we don't know what to do with it to do
So,
that.
that is probably going to be the biggest problem. How are we going to deal with the waste? But there's already nuclear microreactors being developed by the Department of Energy in the US, and I'm sure NASA is up to something.
It's running on Mars right now.
Right now, exactly. But but then the question will always remain: how are we going to process the waste? Right now,
Well,
I think
I'd love
to
nuclear
recommend.
farms. By the way, if I could just give the first of all, I don't have any problem with nuclear. It doesn't have CO2. I worry far more about CO2 than I do about the nuclear waste. And I would say that a nuclear power plant is 1,000 times safer than a coal power plant. I mean, by any measure, deaths per kilowatt hour, anything you want to say,
her
it's
claim
safer.
was that it's better than wind and solar, which is what you're going to take issue with.
But compared to wind and solar, it has two really big problems. One you can maybe solve with the small things, but currently it's way more expensive. It's period. So you give me $10 billion and I will give you a lot more wind and solar energy with storage than you're going to get from spending the money on nuclear. That's number one. And number
And
two, it
way
takes a
sooner,
lot longer
sooner
to
too.
deploy. And so now it takes 10 years to deploy nuclear power. So in that 10 years, you're emitting fossil fuel emissions that aren't replaced yet. But with wind and solar, you can have that going in 6 months. So you're going to have 9.5 years of clean energy while you're waiting for the nuclear. Those two things, small modular reactors can get away with the timing issue, but it's still going to be way more expensive, at least for the foreseeable future. And the thing I worry about the waste is not the waste like the normal waste, but as you said, this depopulation event. So climate change is going to make the shit hit the fan, right? And like, which would you rather have abandoned? A wind or solar farm abandoned, or a nuclear power plant abandoned because of whatever the hell happened, with no
So Dan,
government running it.
But
you made a
I
lot
have
of
a question
very
for the batteries for like a population worldwide storage of energy for stable. You don't have the resource to produce all the batteries you would need. It's just not realistic right now.
It's a
Well,
Yes,
combination, Dan,
sure,
not
you
not
need
everybody.
now, but in the
you,
future.
you need to take also to the account that in 2050 we will need at about 3 times more electrical energy than we need today. So today we are producing in the world 27,000 terawatt hours of the electricity, and in 2050 we will need to produce at least 100 um, thousand terawatt hours of the electricity. So new generation of new nuclear, potentially the breakthrough, we will achieve breakthrough in the fusion. It's inevitable. It needs to be in the mix,
Hey,
at least
Milos.
temporarily,
Agreed.
So
up
It
to
has to
30
be
I
a
years.
just want to add.
combination.
I agree with Fiona. Fiona, can I just say
Sure,
a couple
please.
of
Thank you,
sentences?
dear.
Thank you. So I agree with Fiona. It has to be a combination. Like what Dan said. Yes, I mean I always say when we in the farm, when it comes to energy issues, I say, you know, there's nothing cheaper than free, and sunlight is always free. But having said that, I'm saying that in California, there are parts of the world where the sun is not always in its full force throughout the year. So the whole point of having energy is that can you have it consistently? Can it be stored? And can it be bought from source to place of use? And how many miles go into that? What is the carbon footprint of that? What is the carbon footprint of actually getting, even now, solar is going to the grid, at least in California with PG&E. It's going to the grid and then it's coming back. And honestly, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And what Dan said about cost, I agree, the cost, but we just printed a fuck ton. I'm sorry. We just printed a whole lot of currency just like that. And at this point we have to ask ourselves, what is this thing when we say something is expensive? We just making it up as we go along. We're trying to figure it out. So we have a very short time before we can figure out the backlash of climate change. There are huge swaths of the planet that are just simply going to be like uninhabitable. People are not going to be able to live there. In India, there's going to be wet bulb temperatures, and there's going to be entire regions where people cannot live anymore, and they will just die in their sleep because of climate change. And we have to quickly change our game, and we have very little time, and now is not the time to faff around about money or expenses. I mean, literally, we just like printed money. So with the COVID year, we've seen how we can actually like define and redefine the notion of currency and money. So it's time to act. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
Dan.
Fiona.
The
By,
on
by the
the
way,
on,
I would
on
add
the
that what's nice about what I've been describing is it's not just for the developed world. So this energy, this wind and solar, and on the last time zone I mentioned, there's a report that this is utility scale, so not a small home thing, but a utility scale solar system was bid in Saudi Arabia at 1 cent a kilowatt hour, which is unbelievably cheap, incredibly cheap. And that's today. So imagine 10 years from now when it's a quarter cent a kilowatt hour. That will provide energy. What's the thing that made the United States a rich, powerful country? Well, we had access to cheap energy. and it was the wrong kind. We didn't know it at the time, but we took advantage of it. So now the rest of the world will be able to take advantage of incredibly cheap energy. Like, the people might not have any running water, but they have a cell phone, right? Well, for same price, they could have like an energy system that gives them basic energy needs with some storage and everything like that. It's going to be a very different world. And I should mention, by the way, that one of the things I'm doing is I advise on a new X Prize initiative called the Abundant Energy Alliance, which the goal is to provide clean, abundant energy to everyone, everywhere. Now, we haven't decided what that means yet, but it's an exciting thing. So I'm as excited about the impact on the rest of the world, or the developing world, as I am for the fact that, yes, we all can have cheaper, clean energy in the developed world, which we need for climate reasons. But I'm talking about economic reasons as well now. Anyway, thanks. I'm done.
Dan,
I
on
would
your
love to jump
Can I
in.
ask you a question? Sorry, this is Maria at the bottom. Dan, I have a quick question to you. What do you think about like high frequency trading of energy? Do you happen to like work with any startups that do this?
No, you're talking about like arbitrage of energy and things like that,
Yeah.
like Enron stuff. No, I don't.
No,
I'm
no,
not.
no.
I'm not familiar with it.
More like just just trading energy between players, and it's not necessarily what Enron does.
No, I'm sure there's a use for
Yeah,
that, or a
done
market for
here.
that. You can
Dan, to
arbitrage it
your
yourself by
Can
getting a
I?
battery at home.
Yeah.
A Powerwall will let you do it yourself, actually, right?
Yeah, Dan. So, I mean, I would love to put a Powerwall and go off grid. But so my December, this is an example of somebody who lives at 50 odd latitude, right? So this applies to anybody in that type of latitude. Okay, Britain's got a bit more cloud than other places, but my 4 kilowatt array produces like 40 to 60 kilowatt hours in December. So about 15 hours of full power use. Whereas in July, we're talking like 500. So that's an 8-to-1 ratio. So if I'm going to make it through the winter with only a small amount of battery storage, I'm going to have 8 times my requirement for summer. I'm going to have to provision by 8x. That's a pretty big capital cost to do that. That for
And
me
you
would mean
have
I'd
the
need
roof space, Dan, as
200.
But
well.
that's going to be. Well, when did you put yours in?
Well, I mean, I assume I don't have it. You had a little bit when I don't have
No, no,
enough
no.
to
I'm
even
saying
be
that the
worth talking.
cost to put in 8 times more solar 10 years from now will be less than it was to
Oh,
put in
sure, in
one
10
time
years, but I'm talking about what I can do
solar a few
today.
years from now.
Yeah, 10 years is a long time in climate terms. I want to do something today, and I would have to install 200 kilowatts of solar panels in order to get through the
200
winter.
kilowatts?
Yeah, exactly. We use 3,000 kilowatt hours per month in the winter, indoor pool, that kind of crap. It's a lot, but it doesn't matter
Oh,
because
okay.
the whole thing scales, right? Even if it was just another house with less land and less energy usage, my energy usage per unit area of land is not unusual. It's quite typical of the area.
By the
So
way,
the
what I
the
was
problem is
talking
I've got to
about.
over provision by 8x because of the cloud in Britain, but more than just the
Oh,
cloud. More than the cloud, it's the latitude. It's the difference in length of day between the winter and the summer,
yeah.
and that's the fundamental thing at high latitudes. You take that to the extreme, of course. In the North Pole, you can't use solar at all for 6 months,
But
or
Ben,
the
you're
South
talking
Pole.
But there,
about
By the way, I was not suggesting for your home that would be the ideal. I mean, first of all, yes, it's still an ideal solution for those who want to be off the grid. But I'm talking about community solar or utility scale solar, where all the different houses are sharing. And the region is sharing, and it's a little different
Difference, does
calculation
it?
when you're doing it on
I
your
do.
own. Yeah.
Well, it's not
Then,
really. 'Cause
then in the
sharing.
UK, you are investing quite heavily in offshore wind, really quite heavily.
Yeah, wind, if we could leverage wind, but the average, so as a country, absolutely. So between wind and solar, we're doing quite well as a country. But to Tyler's point about like sovereignty and the individuals getting off grid, that is a lot harder for the average person. They just don't have the roof area to put the panels, and you wouldn't be allowed from what we call in the UK planning permission point of view to put wind up in the average person's garden. And it would be fairly ineffective. So
yes.
because of the winter.
Ben, to your point, I am latitudinally privileged. You just introduced a concept I was not privy to.
Yeah,
Latitudinal.
that's crucial. Yeah,
Yeah.
at the equator, you've got the
I
intermittency
just
is
want to
not.
recognize my privilege of latitude. Yes, indeed, you're
Exactly.
absolutely right.
A long draw
And,
there.
and the
When you
tree
look at
problem too.
Bangladesh and when you look at Nepal and Lotus Energy, and like Bangladesh is an example of just a waste field of solar that hasn't worked, and World Bank and offsets, people trying to sell them systems that are not functioning anymore. So how can we make like a collective conscious responsible way of, one, first buying back their loans, two, providing them with technology that's more up to date, and three, I do agree that we have to have a sector of, in decarbonize, we really focus. What can you invest in 5 to move the needle in 10? And a part is SME, small nuclear, because we do need to replace the coal and solutions, and then really holding those forests. I mean, that's where that core of our submission for X Prize Rainforest is looking at indigenous stewardship models to hold and support their systems and system development for themselves, not for what we think. And that's why it's funny, Starlink can't even get through the Amazon. So how are we going to help them provide themselves their own systems that can support what their needs are? So I just want to bring it up to, consciousness, like what is realistic in around the globe. So open for that. Thank you, Fiona.
Yeah, we're going to go through the headlines as we do in the first hour, and if you want to stay for the third hour, we can go into the free-form debate style. So we did some political news with the hacking, which has now spread from the East Coast pipelines to the Irish medical system to the Washington, D.C. police. And then we just did a bunch of a green tech debate of sorts. I want to turn it to crypto and FinTech if we can. And I'll introduce the first point here. Tether, which claimed to, at launch, and the report that I'm reading is from The Block. It's also being reported by the Financial Times and Forbes, that Tether, which claimed at launch that each Tether was backed by 1-to-1 with the US dollar, releases a breakdown of its reserves, revealing that only 3.87% are in actual cash. The Financial Times version of this, Tether says its reserves are backed by cash, but to the tune of 2.9%. And the Forbes article is Tether finally releases a breakdown of its 42 billion in crypto reserves. Tether, the largest stablecoin issuer in the crypto space, and widely, or commonly used in parts of Africa, Nigeria, I've heard notably, although Mabana can help us fill in the details, released its first breakdown of its reserve holdings. Of their $42 billion in funds, Tether claims to hold over 75% of their reserves in cash and cash equivalents, because it's a 1-to-1 coin to the US dollar, most of which are in the form of commercial paper. The remaining assets include loans to unaffiliated entities of 12.5%, corporate bonds, funds, and precious metals 10%, and additional investments that include Bitcoin and other digital tokens about 1.5%. Tether has been subject to much controversy since its inception in 2014, with speculation surrounding the validity of their holdings. Until March of 2019, it claimed to be a 1-to-1 backed with the US dollar reserves. Tether's website then modified the claim to instead be 100% backed by reserves, meaning non-cash, and assets and loans could also be included in their holdings. Earlier this year, Tether settled with the New York Attorney General's office over a case which was reported back in 2019. The breakdown of funds comes just after being listed on Coinbase, the cryptocurrency exchange, which recently listed on NASDAQ. These events appear to be additional steps on a long journey towards further trust and transparency by Tether. So open for any, I imagine, Donna, you might have a thought on this, or
Tyler, I have.
Go ahead,
I
Donna.
think this was worse than we could have expected.
Yeah.
With Tether. Me personally, I think Tether is a real problem for the industry. It's musical chairs, and one day the music will stop. I mean, Caitlin Long also tweeted that she thought this was worse than she had expected. That we do think I agree with her. This is an Achilles heel, and first of all, they didn't give an audited statement. They gave a pie chart. So let's even see if the New York AG accepts this, and asks for more information.
Yeah,
very helpful that the New York AG will accept this. I mean, in total, it's 6.8% of reserves that are held in cash or T-bills. So that's liquid assets. So that's 93.2%, basically, which is in in crypto or commercial paper assets. Commercial paper assets are basically loans, so promissory notes from the exchanges, the crypto exchanges. So this is, I mean, anybody who didn't see this coming then had their heads buried in the sand. And the reality of this is, what this means is Tether is backed, to the majority, by Bitcoin, which is backed by Tether, which is backed by Dogecoin, which is backed by Tether, which is backed by Nano, which is backed by Tether, because it's Tether that's been driving the volume in the market. And the backstop ultimately are the other exchanges. And I'm not sure any of the other exchanges will make Tether whole on the commercial paper that they have. Yeah. So it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I just tweeted it from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, where you can see the pie chart that Don is referring to, and some people on Twitter are going a bit understandably nuts about it. One journalist says Tether, the most highly traded cryptocurrency by volume, released a legally mandated breakdown of its reserves, only 3.87%, with $42 billion of Tether in circulation at the time, is actually in cash. The company once claimed that all Tether was backed 1-to-1 with cash. And that's sort of the essence of the problem, is there's now a huge distrust issue underway, and this could have, I imagine there might be further shakeout. This could be the beginnings of a little house of card issue, perhaps?
Just as an example, 460 million tethers were printed just the other day when Elon tweeted about. So during that spike down and then the bounce up, just in that period of time, 460 million new tethers were printed.
Yeah, but also to give that context, that's sort of been the average print on a daily basis for the last couple of months. I mean, let's remember that sort of 2 months ago they had 30 billion in tethers, and now we're at today 55 billion, 58 billion.
Yeah. And to break this down very simply for the non-crypto folks, essentially Tether is being perceived as being good as cash, 1-to-1 with the dollars, and what we're realizing is that that claim is the gap with reality is quickly widening. Is that a realistic way to state the problem now? And this is I've heard this often used in developing countries who aren't comfortable with their own fiat current systems, and so it'll be interesting to see.
China's a very big user of Tether, because you can wash the Chinese money back and forth to the banks until it ends up, after 10 washes back and forth, it ends up at a bank that will then turn it into Bitcoin, and then you can send it to an exchange.
That's a very good point, along with also Chinese miners being able to use Tether to basically obfuscate the movement of funds and cash out into dollars. I saw an article. I'll see whether I can't put that in my profile picture.
Okay. A few more fintech crypto headlines to share.
Tyler, just a point of clarity.
Okay.
The 2.9% is slightly understated if the numbers are correct.
Okay.
Typically, the fiduciary deposits would also be included as cash equivalents, and that brings the number to about 18%. I'm not suggesting Tether is all great, but I just wanted to provide that point of clarity.
Okay, thank you, Raman. Another fintech crypto-ish news: Binance is under investigation by the Department of Justice and the IRS. Officials involved include those who probe money laundering and tax offenses. Justice Department, IRS seek information about the crypto exchange. The federal agencies haven't accused Binance of any wrongdoing, but what they say and what the people involved in the investigation are two different matters. They're certainly acting as if they expect bad behavior to be present, but this is being wildly covered, and it speaks to, similarly to this Tether issue, is people want to really see what's going on under the hoods of these modern day financial system alternatives, to summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone will be surprised about the Binance thing. This is, they were wink wink with KYC AML. We expect this to look very similar to the BitMEX case, though I think that they will probably, is my guess, one of the reasons Brian Brooks is there and probably knew all about this beforehand is to be able to create some negotiated settlement with them, which will, of course, promise great behavior. Maybe they'll finance something, the settlement will finance something, and they will have a very serious separation between the US and the global Binance in order to be able to be compliant with the KYC AML.
Yeah, and to tie it back to our previous headlines at the beginning of the hour around the ransomware gang epidemic with the pipeline and the DC police and the Irish healthcare system, which just got hacked hours ago. There's tweets now saying no surprise regarding the Binance investigation by the DOJ and the IRS. Says no surprise here. Chain analysis previously reported that ransomware gangs often use Binance accounts to launder their earnings. Although that's purely Twitter speculation, of course. Although they are pointing to chain analysis, which perhaps MA is familiar with, and we can look into that and confirm that. But if true, then they might be in some deep water. Binance themselves are tweeting out that we take our legal obligations very seriously and engage with regulators and law enforcement in a collaborative fashion. But many are kind of jumping on the bandwagon of saying, ha ha ha, as I've long predicted, the companies involved in D-list attacks that ended up being involved in crime, and Binance is the most criminally active in crypto, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Moving on to there's a lot of fintech crypto news at the moment. And as we mentioned in the previous session, one of Vitalik, kind of the genius behind Ethereum, is selling large amounts of his Shiba Inu coins and Nikita coins and Elon tokens sent to him by coin creators, and he's trading it all in for $60 million worth, and donates the proceeds to charities, and reportedly many of that to India in their moment of need around COVID, which is we have to.
Yeah, you're shy by he was given $1 billion worth of this Shubu and some other coins, and those people were also telling their other buyers that, see, because it's in Vitalik's wallet, he's never going to rug pull us, meaning sell it in in a manner,
right?
And so he didn't like that. Plus, he was going to get hit with the tax as a gift for $1 billion. So he moved some ETH. Another thing that spooked the market the other day, he moved some ETH from his wallet, which hadn't been done in quite some time, and he gave $2 million in ETH, and the $1 billion he gave to the Indian charity.
That's so fantastic. And then it's to this point, the CoinDesk is reporting Vitalik's regift of unsolicited Doge knockoffs, all of these coins you're referring to, that he was gifted. He's regifting these unsolicited Doge knockoff coins, sending meme coin prices plunging, which is probably very true. That probably is why they are plunging, and which is kind of referred to as a rug pull, as you say. A few more here. Coinbase reports Q1 revenue of $1.8 billion, up 200% since last quarter. Monthly transacting users of 6 million, up from about 3 million last quarter. Says it plans to list Dogecoin in 6 to 8 weeks, which will be quite interesting. That Dogecoin is now going to be part of one of the cryptocurrencies on Coinbase that people can trade in a much more easy way. So it'll be interesting to see what effect that has. What else did we see? There was one other really interesting crypto or fintech news. Anyone else have a fintech headline they'd like to share? We can move on to another topic. Okay, let's go to Google is leading an effort supported by many tech giants to maintain work authorization for tens of thousands of people whose spouses hold H-1B visas. Google is leading an effort to maintain work authorization for tens of thousands of people whose spouses hold, and this is a huge issue for the U.S. And U.S. specifically, supporting the spouses of people who work at these companies, because a lot of people who work at these large tech companies are doing so while holding what we call H-1B visas, high-skilled visas that are common in the tech industry. Tech companies that signed onto this are Adobe, Amazon, Apple, Electronic Arts, eBay, IBM, Intel, Microsoft, PayPal, Reddit, StubHub, and Twitter, to name just a few. And it's hopefully they'll get it passed. This was, as I recall correctly, and Justin might recall better, that Trump was very much opposed to these because it's essentially a way for immigrants to work in the U.S. in a legal way, which the Silicon Valley, notably, if you go to the lunchrooms of any of the big Silicon Valley companies that I just named, a huge percent of them are from India and all around Asia. In fact, a wild majority of the people in the lunchrooms in those campuses are from all around India and Asia. And a lot of them are participating in these H-1B visas. And the tech companies have become much more politically active in supporting the Democrats in recent years. And I think they did support Joe Biden quite extensively. And now this might be this was the main issue. If they had to pick one issue to ask Biden for, or one favor to ask for, this would be it. And I suspect they will get it. But we will wait for Justin to return to comment on that. But open floor, I want to get a pulse if anyone on stage has a headline they would like to share. On the topic of Google, there is a huge Google event coming up on just May 18th, 4 days from now, I guess, which is Wednesday, which is their large annual flagship event called Google I/O, where we will have a live companion event here in Clubhouse of geeks who are going to watch the live stream together, as we did for the HTC Vive event that Victoria brilliantly led that, and the Oculus event that we did back in April 21st, and the Apple keynote we did on April 20th. But this Google I/O event is where they often historically have given really interesting previews to very futuristic tech that they've been working on in their labs. So we look forward to that with a lot of interest, and we do hope you join us for that. We will add it to the calendar as soon as they announce the start time of the live stream. But do follow the Tech News Club so that you get notified when we do create that room. And by the way, click on the title of this room to see the Tech News Club, where you will see our upcoming schedule of events, because we do much more than just tech news around the world twice a day. And we even have events now on the Saturday. Michael's going to and Victoria are going to, due to popular demand, this is probably my favorite room in all of Clubhouse, is this Love in the Age of AI with bots and whatnot. If you've not experienced it, you absolutely should. It's fantastic. Michael, you want to say a few words about it?
Yeah. I love all of you who are available after this to hop over to that room with us. It's essentially, basically, what we tend to explore is just the idea of where love is actually going to go. I mean, as you can see from the title I chose, is digital love, dating and sex in VR and AR. And we don't hold back. So I do want to give you a heads up. We do not hold back at all. We explore it to its deepest depths, and whether you are comfortable with it or not is entirely the point. If you're not comfortable with it, then I want you to come in there and challenge yourself to hear where these things, the things that we've discovered are happening, the things that we have discovered are going to happen, and kind of just share your feelings on it. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, this is happening. Things are different. I remember when I don't know how many of you have ever heard of eHarmony, but I remember when eHarmony first came out, and I was a kid, and I told my mom to get on eHarmony, and she was like, "I can never do that. They'll have all my information. They'll know my whole name." Imagine thinking that's all your information. They'll know my whole name. They'll know what city I'm from. And like, you look at that back then, that was like a lot of information to be out in the open. Today, I mean, it's just assumed. It's literally assumed that everyone knows everything about you at all times. At any given moment, any of you could just Google my name, and within an hour, you could probably know everything there is to know about me. And that's insane, but that's how fast things have changed. And that's the point that we're at right now. What's the first thing you do when you meet somebody and you're interested in going on a date with them? Depending on your age, you either hop on their Facebook, you hop on their Instagram, you hop on their Snapchat. One way or another, you do a little investigation online and figure out information about that person. Now, think about that. Think about how easy it is to access all of this information, and then understand that because the world is getting so much smaller because of technology, dating has moved to a much different type of pace and feeling. In fact, during the pandemic, dating online saw an increase of something like 65%. People were doing literal dates online through video and whatnot. And then we started seeing something really interesting happen, which is love pillows started selling more, sex dolls started selling more, all these different sex toys and things like that started selling more. And then AI spiked, AI companionship, and these chatbots where you could kind of talk to that instead of a human being. And then what we started noticing is that there are people out there marrying these things. And so you got to ask yourself, what the fuck is going on? And that's kind of what we explore in that room. So if any of this stuff is intriguing to you and you want to talk about it, please join Victoria and myself and Tyler in them.
This is the third time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because due to popular demand, because I'll tell you this, and I said it last time, you'll go in with, whatever your expectations are. I can assure you, you'll come out of there with a whole different worldview on this topic, because they go into topics that you just didn't know exist. There's corners of humanity that you didn't know existed. If we did, matter of fact, to put numbers on it, we did a poll last time before this room started and asked people, do you think you could ever have a robot or AI companion? And understandably, the vast majority of people say no. After going in that room, people change their minds fundamentally in that room. And so if you're willing to take the pill and have your whole world spun upside down, that's what happens in that room in a way that I've not seen another room in Clubhouse do anything quite like that. So it's quite an experience.
I'm going to try and rein it in this time too, you guys. I know last time we ended up going for 6 hours. I'm going to try and keep it. It's so hard to stop talking about the topic, but I do promise that we'll keep it, 2 or 3 hours at max. I'm saying that now, but it is a fucking Friday, so shit.
But so that room's going to end right at the end of this one. Or that room starts when this one finishes about an hour and a half from now. So we're going to move over to there and bring the popcorn and the snuggle blanket and whatever you need to get you through to make it comfortable. But I'm looking forward to it already. And I have a perfect headline that dovetails perfectly with that. Here it is. No. Oh, somebody took it. Oh, damn it. Where did it go?
Shit. I'll search for you.
Twitter's browser thing updates automatically. My browser refreshed and it took away.
What, somebody took it from Twitter? Like,
no.
I don't get that.
Here it is. I got it. It's from the Financial Times, and a bunch of people have tweeted this in. Thank you. They found this article on online, and they're tweeting it at me and they CC'd the Tech News Around the World Twitter account. And multiple people sent this in, so I know people are interested in this, and it fits perfectly with the topic of the room with Michael and Victoria around that. And the title of this article is Emotion Recognition. Can AI detect human feelings from a face? And the connection and the important relevance of this is there are these AI bots. And by the way, is Jean in the room? I don't see him. No, but he and other folks have created these AIs, like in the movie Her, if you've seen that can have very shockingly, surprisingly engaging conversations with the users. And what's the name of the app, Michael?
I believe his is Leah 27. Let me find her.
No, I mean the other companion app, dating virtual.
Oh, I thought you meant John's. The one that we were using was Replica. You can go download that one now. Yeah.
And the interesting bit is when you're talking to this AI companion, they to the point of this article that I'll retweet about can an AI detect human emotions in your face? The answer is yes, they very much can. In fact, they can now win poker games against the best poker players in the world, who are arguably mathematically the best, emotional face readers in the world, and the AIs are now beating the world's best poker players. Just to give you an idea, quantifiably, how good AIs are not only at detecting human feelings from faces, but even the lying of the emotions of the faces, which is really what poker is about. So, arguably, an AI companion on your app, if you had an AI app companion, it could know your emotions better than a human companion can, because by extension, they are winning these poker tournaments with the best poker players in the world, who are able to detect not only human emotions, but the deception of human emotions. So imagine that being used in your relationship, where these AI algorithms, facial recognition algorithms, can detect the true essence of your emotional state, even if you are not being honest about it. That is where, just to give you a hint as to where the conversations go in that room, and this headline from that everyone's sharing, I will retweet now. So thank you for sharing that to everyone who did, because there was multiple people who sent that in, and I will retweet it now so you can do the deep dive your own self. And as I said, people are sharing all kinds of interesting articles, and Cal just sent one in 18 minutes ago about all of the companies may be punished for paying ransoms. Back to the initial topic of the day about this new epidemic of ransom
Credit
gangs.
Raman sent me
Hey,
that.
hey, Tyler.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Tyler, can I follow up with one point on that? The emotional AI. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
please.
ask. So, because we've been talking about it, and I had to jump for a minute, so I don't know if we hit this, but it was in the context of dating and this, and then you brought up in work or life the poker. But I know there's a lot of uses for this kind of stuff in the sort of the medical field, where they're for to have company for people and not feel alone, and to get people to actually do their like meds and exercises and things like that, like to have a companion who keeps them happy and on track. So I know there are a lot of uses in that field as well.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point around how people are using Nike Plus and these, keeping yourself on your intermittent fasting and keeping yourself, doing certain things. That is in some sense the beginnings of
and
a
bots. They have bots.
yeah.
Yeah, they have like little not bots, but like little like like you might get a fuzzy toy that a friend of mine works for a company like this, and she gave me one that just talks back to me. It's not AI, but she goes, but they give you, it's like a toy or something that, like a pet, like it makes you feel like you have a pet that keeps you company. So it's even more than that works with like people who to avoid depression, and then encourage reminds them to take their pills, things like that.
Yeah.
And Tyler, as we increase the intimacy with AI, is it like connected with that whole AI ethics thing? Like when when you mentioned the brand Google earlier in this event next week, foremost in my mind was like the whole flight of talent out of the kind of ethics space there. Like, and it just, i.e., as we go more intimate and we go more deep and more kind of in this space, then the need ramps up in that space. I.e., it's not good that there's been a flight of talent.
Right. So that's actually a good point there, and that ethics is always at the forefront. So all these big companies have their ethical teams, and as you say, which become more and more relevant. And then also the flight of, what was it? Was their top people? Was it at Alphabet or Google that left?
It was Google, wasn't it? But it was actually what they said in the article was that they'd got somebody else in, and they were actually building out the team to double it in size.
That's
so I think that there'll actually be more resources going into this space, and I'd be curious to know, because in order for them to be more objective, if they sit outside the organisation rather than sit within the organisation, because then there's always some sort of conflict. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that.
That was the recent headlines. Yeah, there was a disintegration of the team, and now Google has stated, it was about 48 hours ago or 3 days ago, they said they're going to double down on the size of the team and committed to rebuilding it bigger and better, which makes sense because there's just so many ethical issues still around AI. as we often dive into in this room, and it certainly will in the next one with Michael.
Yeah. On that one, Dekai's doing a room tomorrow on the social credit score, and I'm going to ask him, Tyler, if you'll come in here and just talk to this whole ethics space, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's been a while since he jumped in here.
Yeah, the challenge there, Dave, also is that large companies and then the little guys, right? So little guys are doing this, and that's where the startups are. Eventually, they'll probably get bought out by the big guys. So I had 3 pitches here in Oxford from the medical guys. One of them is just to this an AI for parenting for troubled, single mothers or single fathers, single parents, basically are trying to juggle lots of things, and they're known by the social services as having lots of problems, and they're experimenting. They got live experiments going on here, which I have to still go and kind of see properly. But it's literally these little alerts and things that come at them, and I was so cynical about them before I started to just kind of engage on this topic, which actually is frankly to Michael and just this room really, because before that I was like, no way are these alerts going to help, or they're going to come at the right time when you need them. People are doing 5 other things at the same time, but they're little companies, right? And they're stuff, and I don't even know if they think about the ethics in that sense, right? But there's some smart people thinking about it.
Yeah. No, totally.
Cal, I just retweeted your article that you shared about from Reuters. Companies may be punished for paying ransoms to these hacker networks, according to the U.S. Treasury. Facilitating ransomware payments to sanctioned hackers may be illegal. The U.S. Treasury said today, signaling a crackdown on the fast-growing market for consultants who help organizations pay off cyber criminals. In a pair of advisories, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control and its Financial Crimes Enforcement Network warned that facilitators could be prosecuted even if they or the victims did not know that the hackers demanding the ransom were subject to U.S. sanctions. So even if you don't know if they're sanctioned or not. Ransomware works by encrypting computers, holding the company's data as hostage until a payment is made. Organizations have often ponied up ransoms to liberate their data. Yeah, well, we saw that twice today already. It's a game changer, said Alon Gal, Chief Technology Officer of Hudson Rock, which works to head off ransomware attacks before they happen. Before companies could decide whether or not to pay cyber criminals off, he said, now that those decisions are being brought under government oversight, we are going to see a much tougher handling of these incidences. And what's interesting about this is the kind of legislation that's needed precisely because if these ransomware gangs know that it's illegal for them to be paid, then that is a very strong disincentive, because you're attacking someone knowing it's illegal for them to pay you the ransom. That's quite an interesting political move. So thank you for that, Cal. I just tweeted that. I'll pause there. There was there's a lot of news out there, but I want to pause because we've done a bit of the politics of green tech. We could still do med tech. We did a bit of crypto and fintech. We could still do China, India, Africa, VR, med tech, and AI. We've done a little bit of AI, but I want to pause to see if somebody's got something on stage they are burning to share.
Yeah. Hi, Tyler. It's Shane here.
Hey, Shane.
Looping back to the conversations we were having about Taiwan, the chip shortage, and the kind of silicon dome around TSMC.
Yep. It's called the Silicon Shield, to be very.
The Silicon Shield.
Yeah, that's the literal term that Taiwan uses in reference to the fact that TSMC is one of the most important companies in the world, if not the most important company in the world at the moment, and that's no exaggeration.
Yes, absolutely.
It's absolutely true, and that might be confusing to a lot of folks, but just to clarify, it's because they are the leader in semiconductors, and semiconductors are what make the modern life possible. And they happen to be based in Taipei, Taiwan, and it's sort of the crown jewel because everything that makes these modern countries operate is based on these semiconductors, and that stems right there from, that's the mecca of semiconductors itself, is TSMC in Taipei, Taiwan, and that's why the U.S. will never let China take Taiwan, because of TSMC specifically. So to a point, that's why they call it the Silicon Shield. So go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, so this was in the Asia Times this morning. I'm surprised it didn't get more column inches elsewhere as well. The Taiwan Air Force test fired two AMRAAM and Sidewinder missiles in exercises, I guess yesterday. The point being that these are supplied by the United States and can only be and were only fired with the explicit consent of the Biden administration, and it's the first time that those missiles have been live fire tested in Taiwan. So it seems to be a kind of escalation of willingness of the White House to throw its support behind some element of show of strength by the Republic of China Air Force.
Yeah, well, it's due to that does speak to the escalating threat on the ground there, and for that we must turn to Zabir and Lawrence, our friends on the ground in Taiwan, to give us an update on the kind of
There's a beer here today.
Yeah, he was in the other room, right? And he and I chat and call each other more often now, actually. Let me try pinging them in to get the ground truth on what's going on, because they never cease to impress with their ground truth of things. So Zubair, but we can go on to the next topic while we wait for them to potentially join us here.
Chipset front, Tyler, did you see that the boss of IBM is saying that he believes the chipset shortage could last until the end of 2022?
Yeah, I think that he knows far better than me, but that fits very. I'm surprised it's not longer than that based on the stuff that I've read. So I've now pinged Lawrence and Zubair. Yeah.
So from the visibility I have,
I mean, you know a lot more than I do. So, what's your take, Jonathan?
My take is he wants to get in on the government funding in the US that obviously the big tech and Intel have canvassed Congress support for. I think likewise, because obviously they're involved in the semiconductor industry. He is interested in obviously a negative message, so that then potentially further state funding can be brought to bear.
Right. I noticed, Mayra, welcome back. You raised your hand. What would you like to share? And Ben as well. Good to see you again. What's cooking?
Well, we were just talking about AR and VR. It just got me interested. So I don't have anything to share at the moment, but
not a
just
problem.
Like everyone else.
Hang tight.
Yeah,
it's great to have you on stage. Yeah. And then Ben, Ben just jumped up. Ben, did you want to comment on Taiwan by chance?
No, actually, Tyler, there was something yesterday you were talking about the poaching agreement.
Yes.
Not to poach, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was corrected, but there was a Department of Justice lawsuits as well as civil lawsuits.
Yep.
So those the agreements, they're not legal. So the companies cannot do that anymore.
They're highly illegal, Ben, but they are very much still doing them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's people do illegal things all the time, but the problem is you have to prove that they're doing them in court. The problem is nobody has a strong financial incentive to prove that somebody's doing this particular thing.
Right. So I was going to read actually the Steve Jobs email and Schmidt's email to the room, but I think you guys can just look it up on Google.
Yeah, but
there were literally evidence.
Yeah.
And then I think the employees, actually the interesting thing is the employees were able to file lawsuits.
Correct.
And got rewarded the money.
They
for
did.
That. So
that's right.
Maybe the evidence is the key. Maybe people are still doing that, but there's no evidence of it. But
correct.
But there are good. There are ways to look at this.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to dwell on this.
Yeah. People have tried to put together data points around the movement of employees between the big five tech companies versus the movement of employees across other tech companies. And every time they do it, there is much less movement amongst the employees of the big five, much, much, much less, which is essentially the smoking gun that they have a collusion of not poaching. But then you need a little more than that when you go to court. You need emails showing, oh, hey, I'm not going to hire that. They're smart enough. The people behind this, the collusion is being done by incredibly smart individuals. It was a handshake 20 years ago at a cafe on University Avenue. And how are you going to prove that in court, Ben?
But the coffee was very good. I've been there at that coffee shop. But, I was wondering whether I was wondering whether big data can come in, whether the people can look at the data of the movement amongst these different companies. I think there may be such data available for
there is. The data is there. The data is perfectly clear. It proves the point. They're not poaching from each other. That's well known on a statistic basis. The problem is they can say, yeah, well, what can we say? People love to work here and they don't like to leave. Well, what's your point? That doesn't prove that. You need more proof than that in a courtroom to prove that you were not allowed, that Google's not sending you job application opportunities. You have a hard time proving that they're not sending you something, because, by the way, both parties are in on it. You're working at Apple, and Google's not sending you job opportunities, trying to recruit you. Both of them are in on it. What are you going to say in the courtroom? Hey, judge, Google's not sending me, not trying to recruit me. And Google's going to look at you like you're out of your goddamn mind, because they're in agreement with Apple much more than they care about you, because they're more worried about the staff they have and Apple not stealing their staff than about you. So it just doesn't work. I mean, this particular collusion racket is quite strong and hard to break, precisely for this reason. Technically, legally, it's illegal. It's just incredibly difficult to prove, because they are smart enough not to write emails to each other saying, hey, remember that collusion deal we made 20 years ago? Oh, yeah, I remember. Okay, great. Yeah, let's not talk about that because somebody can find this email. They're not doing that, Ben. That's why you're not going to be able to win that court case.
I'll say, Tyler, that it's possible to prove a murder charges without a body.
Yes.
I think maybe there's a possibility to prove without direct email or phone evidence.
It can be proved
with just outside data to actually do this in a civil case. But I'm just saying
you're just going to have to show damages. That's the tricky part.
Tyler, you want some news from Singapore?
Please do. Is it about COVID?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not going to talk about COVID anymore. Okay. Actually, I tweaked this as well, but I guess you have too many things to share. So anyhow, maybe one from Japan first. There was a Japanese journalist who were detained in Myanmar.
And released.
Yes, and released. I think he should be back in Japan by now.
Correct.
So next one will be JD.com, the logistic arm of the e-commerce company, the e-commerce giant actually, has secured about 1.5 billion in commitments from SoftBank Vision Fund, Singapore government, of course, Temasek Holding, and 5 other cornerstones investors as it heads for public listing. Next one, the giant's tech titans wage war, salary war in Singapore is scrambled for Southeast Asian markets as they are turning Singapore into the latest battlefield in the pursuit for primacy in the region of Southeast Asia. Alphabet, Google, said on Friday that it was leading about 30 companies and trade groups in opposing a lawsuit that seeks to stop over 90,000 spouses of highly skilled U.S. visa workers from having jobs in the country. And the last one is MedTech related, I think. Singapore headquarter Neuron Mobility has launched in Canada, while Temasek Trust has entered into a strategic collaboration with SDG Impact, UNDP initiative. It's all tweaked on Tech News Around the World.
Thank you. Madeline, are you still on stage? Madeline has been sharing some truly fantastic articles. Thank you for this, Madeline. I just want to go through a few of these. One here I'll retweet now about a man paralyzed from the neck down uses AI brain implants to write out text messages. And let's see here. I just retweeted this. A combination of brain implants and neural network helped a 65-year-old man paralyzed from the neck down type out text messages on a computer at 90 characters per minute, faster than any known brain-machine interface. Is Sid in the room? Because this is right up Sid's alley. He works at Apple in this kind of capacity. Let's invite Sid in. And by the way, while I'm pinging in Sid and while we wait, hopefully Zubair and or Lawrence from Taiwan are able to join us here. But please do feel free to invite in any friends you might have you think might enjoy tech news around the world, of course. and
Hey,
especially,
Tyler.
yep,
Oh, I was just going to comment on
yeah,
that typing one. I heard a commentary on that one yesterday, and the interesting part of it is that they are tapping into a certain part of the brain and so it's more effective with people that have that skill previously of typing versus never had it. And so the interesting part is that they've actually located a part of the brain that uses that, and that's why it's making it stronger for them.
Interesting. Yeah, it says the patient is the first person to test this new technology, which was developed at America's Stanford University, no doubt. 2 widgets were attached to the surface of the brain. And by the way, Sid said precisely this yesterday in the room, where he says that the team at Stanford is very friendly with the team at Neuralink, and that even the team at Neuralink are formerly from Stanford. And he, being in this space, probably knows them personally as well. But that the test subject was then asked to imagine writing out 572 sentences over the course of 3 days. These text passages contained all the letters of the alphabet. Yeah, well, no doubt 572 sentences will certainly cover all 26 letters, as well as punctuation marks. And the person was asked to represent spaces in between the words using the greater than symbol. Apparently, they haven't figured out how to do spaces yet as part of this. And signals from the electrodes were then given to a recurrent neural network as input. The model was trained to map out each specific reading from the subject's brain to the corresponding character as output. With the data set of 31,000 plus characters, the machine learning algorithm was able to learn how to decode the subject's brain signals to each character he was trying to write out correctly about 94% of the time. So the real secret sauce here is the AI that then learned the neural impulses, essentially. And then there's a video about it. A YouTube video is embedded as part of this article that I just shared from the Twitter account. So if you want to deep dive on it, please dig into that and definitely retweet it if you find it as interesting as I did. There was also another article about the first spinal surgery with AR headset takes place. Also from Madeline, who has a real knack for finding these really wild kind of futuristic medtech articles. So the headline is First Spinal Surgery with Augmented Reality Headset. Director of the Robotics Spine Institute in Las Vegas recently led the first ever spinal surgery procedure using an augmented reality headset paired with a surgical robot. And there's a photo of the device. So I'm going to retweet this article. You can see this wild looking VR headset device with a camera on it. It says Dr. Polestra and his practice, in partnership with the Nevada Spine Clinic, completed the posterior lumbar fusion procedure on a patient using a combination of robotic platform integration with an FDA-approved X-Vision, normally a fairly invasive and lengthy surgery lasting anywhere between 6 to 7 hours. This particular procedure using the X-Vision headset in tandem with the robot brought the surgery time down to just under 2 hours because the headset allows for the surgeon and his team to more precisely identify and pinpoint where to place the implants. Prior to this procedure, blah, blah, blah. You can see it for yourself. I just retweeted that from the Twitter account. Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible, Tyler. I mean, like my buddy who had motor neuron disease, like I was still I was still so impressed with the retinal. He would have, because his voice went towards the latter days, he would have spoken to me through the iPad. The eye going to the iPad and then speech coming out. But so interesting to think about in those really sad cases, like the first story that you talked about. The characters per minute. Really, really hopeful stuff.
Yeah,
amazing.
that's crazy hopeful stuff. Here, this is the craziest one of all. Madeline sent in from India Times. Scientists create living robots that think and have memories with the use of frog cells. A frog. Highlights of the article here. Developed by scientists at Tufts University and the University of Vermont, the tiny Xenobots, were initially created from frog cells. However, the new upgrades allow them to assemble into a body from a host of single cells without the need for muscle cells while also possessing a memory. Researchers working on the Xenobots claim that they're constructed just like normal robots, except instead of using artificial materials, the Xenobots use biological cells. And while the cells could have numerous other capabilities that could benefit in the field of healthcare and environmental, researchers claim that the Xenobots have also been able to shed light on the functioning of a human cell. Scientists have developed a new batch of biological robots that possess memories as well as the ability to assemble themselves. These are an upgrade to the Xenobots we saw last year. Developed by scientists at Tufts University and the University of Vermont, the tiny Xenobots were initially created from frog cells and were able to do small tasks like moving themselves and things around them, as well as showcasing collective behavior as a swarm. However, the upgrades allow them to assemble into a body from a host of single cells without the need for muscle cells, while also possessing a memory where it can record and recollect whatever has happened to them. Truly fascinating article.
What they actually made is the replicators from Stargate.
I was about to say, this is true, like absolutely science fiction type stuff, where rather than making mechanical robots, they're making biological robots. And that is indeed real science fiction becoming, but according to this article, a reality. I mean, they name the sources. I think, Madeline, if I could behoove you to reach out to those people at Tufts University and get them into Clubhouse so we can confirm whether or not this article is just complete bullshit or not, because this is just mind-bendingly wild stuff. Yeah.
Tyler, related to this, did we talk about the 2-nanometer chip? We
did. IBM. Yep.
Yeah. Tyler? So the related on that, I think there was some development many years ago. It was Intel or Google, I can't remember, that they were trying to come up with the new ways of developing a transistor, the chips, which is not, there's a limit. You can't use, now it's 2 nanometers, but I think there's a limit to go to maybe angstrom. So they were using DNA molecules, the double helix, to actually come up with a way that's literally that's sort of related to what you were just
biological,
talking about. News. Exactly, the biological, literally biological chips. I used to work with the biological chips, but those are microassemblies, so mono assemblies of DNA detecting technology. But this is literally you're actually mimicking the live process to calculate computing.
Yeah.
And the other thing about this 2 nanometer chip is that because it's the energy consumption is 75% less. I wonder if people have thought about this mining for Bitcoin process, whether it's going to take a lot less time and a lot quicker process to finish the whole mining as we had expected before. Once these 2 nanometer computer chips are being manufactured and made into computer, whether that's going to be changing the whole story.
Well, it will definitely make the moving to a smaller process will make the processes more energy efficient. That's certainly true. But I think greater efficiency probably in the short to medium term. I mean, yeah, we're going to see a move to 4 nanometers, possibly even 3 nanometers by the end of this year at TSMC. But I think what Apple's doing with, integrating into the SoC more of the computing peripherals, so memory, storage, graphics, I think that's probably going to have a greater impact than a reduction in the fabrication process, the die size, and yeah, you eventually run in, as you rightly point out, to physics. So the physical wavelength of light.
Yeah, that limits, I think, around 1.6 nanometers is what they call the de Broglie wavelength of an electron. So, they're getting pretty close to that limit.
So Jonathan or Ben, I think Jonathan's got on the phone. Just a quick question, like to the other Ben's point. When do you guys think, just rough, when we'll have quantum computing, the promise of that, and some of this biological kind of progress around, so we get a whole different step change in power in computational power. Is that what's the estimate? 5 years, 10 years?
Was that to me, Cal, as in the Ben with
Yeah,
the
no,
voice in the
either of you
background,
guys. I think he's gone on the
Ben?
phone. Jonathan, no, the other Ben asked the question. I'm just asking you, Ben, and also Jonathan, but he's gone on the phone, I think.
Well, my answer is very quick. I don't know, but the ability to manipulate single DNA molecule, that's been around for many years. It came out from a professor at Harvard, I think almost 10, 15 years ago. So in other words, when you look at using sort of electron microscope, it literally can actually break it up or anneal it using something that's viewable as in electron microscope. So I think physically manipulating single DNA molecules are there. Whether that's going to be turning into how we can use that as a sort of quote unquote chip. I haven't followed the development for the past some years, but I'm a bit of optimistic that it is doable. Besides, as I said, somebody has said that 1.6 is the max. So there's nothing else to work on, even for IBM, all those smart people, in New Jersey. So somebody has to be focusing on something they have to give up on working on something that's not possible physically, right? So now it's 2 nanometer, 1.6 is the max. What I'm just thinking they would have to work on something using new approach, and I think DNA molecules maybe what's coming up next. Well, wait, maybe we'll get to share that in the tech news next time.
Tyler, can I
So, Callum, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just give you some real live update from London, from the Prime Minister's office?
Yeah, please do.
The Indian virus has meant that Boris Johnson says it's serious disruption to the lockdown easing, and there's going to be a lot of changes going on, just like what's happened in Singapore and Wales, which is part of United Kingdom, is now going to restrict access to them as well. So we're not out of the woods. Just wanted people to be aware of it. It's fine to talk about chips, but there is much more present danger.
Indeed, there is. And this is we mentioned.
That's a very good point. I'm just watching it.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting about this is while specifically Singapore and Thailand have notably done an incredibly good job thus far, until very recently, seemed globally to really have managed it rather masterfully. And then in just very recent days and weeks, both Thailand and Singapore, which have had incredible control of it, are now starting to struggle a bit. More so Thailand. Singapore's it's really just, there was some headlines today, but Thailand is where I'm at. We're really surprised with how this new UK variant is really wreaking a considerable amount of havoc here, and other parts of Asia as well that notably had it under control. And then you had the UK really seemed to have it under control. It's like it's really deceptive where if people start celebrating early, it can really come back to in a way they didn't expect with these variants.
It's not the UK variant; it's the Indian variant, which is much more virulent.
I mean, in Thailand, it's the UK variant specifically.
Oh, I see.
I cannot make a comment regarding the Singapore side. I just have some updates regarding that.
Yeah.
You want to hear? Okay, basically, I think because actually, to be honest with you, the spike is not so much.
Right. It's low cases.
Yeah, quite. It's not. It's actually like I think of course it's still within 100. But the thing is, we are going to have some international events from June. So in order to make sure that we can curb it before that, we actually sacrifice and do a mini lockdown for 1 month, so that we can, because the event is called, I think it's called the Shangri-La Convention or something like that. The defense delegates from all around the world actually coming in, getting ready
the
for the
Shangri-La
World Economic
Dialogues.
Forums, for the WEF, which is going to be held in August. So that's the reason why we are trying our best to curb it, so that it will not be an issue.
Yeah,
I think it's impressive. I think what they're doing is impressive.
Yeah, indeed it is. That's the key, is to jump on it early. And that's why Thailand did such a good job of it for so long, is because they were out in front of it. Sid, glad to see you back on the stage, my friend. We were just talking about these articles, and I just found somebody else. We were talking about this gentleman who had some what we call BCI in your industry. is it brain chip interface, or what does BCI stand for? Brain computer interface.
Yeah, brain computer
and
interface.
as you had told us, I think 24 hours ago, about how the team at Stanford is really one of the leading teams on the planet at the moment around this, and they're friends with the team at Neuralink, as you said. And Scientific American is just reporting now about new brain implants turn visualized letters into text. The technology lets people with paralysis perform thought dictation at rates approaching thumb speeds of texters.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same paper.
Yeah. And you sent me the actual clinical journal.
The Nature paper.
The journal paper, and now the journalists are now doing what they do in turning the research into journalism, right? For us pedestrians. And it says, when we move, speak, or sense, or speak, or do just about anything, our brain generates a specific pattern of electrical activity. And for decades, scientists have been connecting those impulses to machines, not only to understand and treat brain diseases, but also to help people with disabilities. Brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, as Sid and his friends like to call them in the biz, can restore movement in people with paralysis and may help treat neurological and psychiatric diseases. And then the team at Stanford, coupled with electrodes implanted in the brain, was able to read the thoughts of a man with full body paralysis as he was asked to convert them into handwriting. The BCI transformed his imagined letters and words into text on a computer screen, a form of mental handwriting. The technology could benefit the millions of people worldwide who are unable to speak or type because of impaired limbs or vocal muscles. And they have a really interesting video, YouTube video embedded in this article, which I will tweet from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account at TNATW. And thank you to Kieran for sharing that. I should actually retweet it from him because he's the one who found that article. But yeah, any thoughts you have about this, Sid?
Just adding quickly, I finished reading the paper last night because I couldn't stop. I had to get back to it. So one of the key takeaways that they've sort of walked away with or tried to tell the readers is there is a little bit more hope in BCI when you're trying to use these neural signals to learn temporally dependent patterns. So things like handwriting, where you're actually moving your hand in a much structured manner, right? That has a little bit more, how do I say, repeatability in the neural response or the neural signatures as compared to, moving a mouse on a screen and clicking. That's why some of the past research that tries to use the mouse as an input device, as a proxy, using the neural signals and using the neural signals to move the mouse on the screen is a little bit harder. But something like handwriting, which is more repeatable, which has a little bit of per person signature, seems to be a little more possible. And when I tweeted it, I said calibration is still the grand challenge. So if you see the news, they've only shown it with one person, and they have to calibrate it every day to keep the accuracy high. So this is going to be interesting, and this goes back to my point around edge computing, is these networks will have to update themselves all the time for the person that they are working with. So this is a very important and an interesting thing that they've shown, and they're so clever. They just did it for one subject. All these other studies try to prove it for 30, 40, 50 people and loses statistical power along the way. But they meticulously did it for one subject and did it really, really well. So that's another thing to just keep in mind. So yeah, I'm done speaking. I got to jump off in a meeting, but this was awesome. I saw you guys ping me, so I came in.
Sid, actually, Sid, I have a sort of follow-up question on that. But regarding
Sid's having to leave, so just are you okay, Sid? Did you say you have a meeting?
I can stay for one question.
Thanks.
Thanks. No problem. Go ahead, Ben.
So sure. So the question is that there have been research done on restoring sight in blind people, say for example by replacing a cornea. But after so many years of being blind and leading their lives with guard dogs, crutches, blah blah blah, they have discovered that even though after the sight, little physical function was restored by surgery or any sort of medical technology, and they are able to see shapes and even colors, but there was no way for them to actually make sense of it, particularly the depth perception or something like that. And that research has been done for many years ago, and I think it's still the case now. So I wonder whether sort of the BCI approach could help in that regard, because the ability to perceive depths and to be able to actually utilize the newly found function in, for example, eyesight, for example, whether that's really a mental process, because they have missed those years when they were blind, of learning how to detect the perception of the depth, like the sighted people be able to, like most of the sort of the sighted people have been able
Yeah,
to
so
do.
this, I'll quickly answer this sort of, and I'm in no means expert in this space. This touches upon neuroplasticity. So when you've exposed your brain to a certain signal, or in this case, lack of a signal, the neuroplasticity aspect of the brain, that you start to adapt to whatever stimulus is there, and the brain changes. The brain changes over time. So when you suddenly shock it with a new signal, in this case, they grew a cornea, and they were able to see again and see shapes again. The brain had lost the ability, or sort of had plastically changed over time and adapted to the new normal. So now this is the new normal. And there's a lot of work that shows that there are certain aspects in neuroplasticity that are more ephemeral than others. But this is still a very early developing field. Um, yeah, the human eye is a part of the human brain. It's the vision system, the optic disc where the light falls is a part of the human brain. Or sorry, the what am I saying? Yeah, the macula. Yes, thank you. The macula, where all the rods and cones in the eye are part of the brain. So again, that is also subject to neuroplasticity. So that part also changes over time. The sensing capabilities of that whole pipeline, all the way back to the visual cortex, change over time. So I think this is an interesting field, and as it develops and develops more, we'll see these kind of papers come out.
If I can add some facts, so the problem is when there was never vision, other functions like other sensory systems will take over that real estate in the brain, and that's the problem then, because basically you lost that real estate to other parts of your sensory system. But in mice, at least, we were able to copy a specific memories, like with it's mostly a threat, what we do combined with a stimulus, and then copy that activity pattern to another animal, and then basically that animal had that conditioned stimulus learned without ever going through the tasks. And if the question is, like, my idea would be how to maybe solve this is to take the activity patterns of humans that have an intact visual system and basically copy that activity pattern to help basically to jumpstart, basically as a catalyst to jumpstart the system how to perceive 3D and all these images.
So
So
on that note, I'd recommend, Katrina, you go read on optogenetics. And this is
yeah,
a
I
field.
work with
Yeah.
optogenetics.
Okay, great.
Like, that's
Perfect.
my
I'm
job.
sorry, I
So
didn't see your
yeah,
profile, but yeah.
it's fine.
Yes. So the MIT Media Lab, the folks at Media Lab have done a lot of work where they've activated dead neurons using fish cells by
So cool.
shining different colors light of it. All right, I'm
Yeah,
going to drop off. Thanks,
thanks
guys.
for jumping in on the ping request.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so
Fun,
much for
fun.
doing that.
Thanks. No problem. See
that
you
right
guys later.
there is the magic of Clubhouse, my friends, and that's what makes this room what it is, because we ping in folks who know what's going on behind these articles and can give their professional context, and that's why we're able to do with the news what so far no one else has really been able to do. And this concept is only going to improve as we continue to grow. Just an hour ago, we were the biggest room in Clubhouse, and as the audience grows, as the concept grows and improves.
And Tyler, we're also learning to respect them when they come on, right? So when
100%.
people pop in and they leave, because some of these discussions can go on, right?
Of course.
But they've come in and Yeah, so that we as a whole network here, we're learning how to do that too.
1,000%. But it's also the monetization factors coming into play in the very near future as well, and we might be able to entice in some the people directly related to these articles if need be. But it's a really fun thing to do. And did Zubair or Lawrence manage to jump in from Taiwan to give us an update?
No, we haven't had them in.
Not yet. Hey, Roy, welcome. There is some Chinese headlines, which Roy is renowned for sharing with us. I've got one to start us off. And Leon as well might be in the audience. I know he's tweeting here. Are you in the room, Leon?
Leon is on
Leon's
stage.
here.
Okay, good. And
I'm
Kai as well.
here.
So let's do some China news. So I've got one to get us started here. New rules would ban. This is related to Tesla. China clamps down on auto data collected by Tesla and others. Specifically, there are new rules within China that would ban sending the road and landscape data overseas. It must be kept within China, and this actually makes sense and is well understood. If you've ever tried to use Google Maps, where you take the little yellow person in the corner and drop them onto the road to see the road view, there are most countries you can do that. There's notably some countries where you cannot do that, and China is one of those countries where China doesn't want you to be able to see the road view data. And so it's not a surprise that Tesla, which has cameras surrounding the whole car, will not be able to share that data outside of China. So that says China has moved to sharply restrict the types of automotive data that companies can take beyond its borders, exercising greater control over a crucial factor in the competitiveness of Tesla and other global car makers. And that's where it gets interesting, because Tesla uses a lot of that data to its competitive advantage, and that's one of the reasons Tesla is so successful, because it's a moving 8-camera computer, and it uses the data in incredibly interesting ways for its autonomous driving. Tesla notably uses its cameras to do its autonomous driving compared with other autonomous systems which are based on LiDAR, for example. So this could really kneecap, if China could essentially make policies which restrict Tesla from using its cameras in the way that it needs to do its autonomous driving, which would effectively kill Tesla in China. It would make it far less competitive with the other systems that don't use the camera systems for its autonomous driving. Tesla's really unique in that it's really the only one that does that, which they believe long-term will be its advantage, but certainly could become a huge disadvantage in China, or a competitive Achilles heel in China. So anyway, I will tweet this article out. Yeah.
Tyler, are you related to that?
Yep.
I just learned yesterday that in terms of the privacy laws, China is actually developing new rules, even though there's something that's relevant to security and privacy and data center in 2017. Mm-hmm. But in last month, in April, there were drafts on similar privacy laws, such as GDPR and CCPA, which is the European and the U.S. version, California version of consumer privacy laws. So there are similarities between those provisions.
Yeah.
And I would suggest people who are interested in or having relevant businesses in terms relating to data center in China, how to store data, to keep watch on the development on particular standards to evaluate, such as security assessment.
This is a great point. Yes, Ben, this is a very good point, because this issue is not unique to within China data. We've covered many other headlines where China is doing very similar things with the Chinese tech companies and the FinTech companies, very notably, and the food delivery companies, where China is now becoming very aware of how these big tech companies are using data and working to restrict it and be more controlling of it and mindful of it, etc. So this is not a unique attack on Tesla by any means. It's China is doing this.
So 2 points on that. One is that unfortunately Sid mentioned edge computing, and I wasn't sure what the news that you're reading on Tesla. The problem is, what was the real problem? Whether it was a case where the Tesla under the new rules, they would not be able to send the data back to the U.S., or if that were the case, whether there's anything to do to leverage any possibilities of using data center in Tesla China to be able to still offer the functionality of the Tesla auto
That's
driving
where it
system
gets really interesting, because Tesla is two things. It's the car, and then it's all of the AI information and data. And if Tesla doesn't really think of itself as a car company, it has stated itself in its most recent shareholder meeting, where they said, we are not a car company. We are an AI, machine learning, data company, robotics company. And what they mean is all of the data that they get, as the car is a moving 8-camera autonomous, robot. And that's how they perceive the vehicle. And in that sense, that data that it's collecting with the cameras and the AI, that's to them is the really valuable part, which is a very futuristic view of what these things will become. And the question is, will they be forced to keep that data in China? And if so, will China force them to use it and potentially steal it and give it to their competitors in China? So it gets very messy very quickly. And there's another article right now that's totally related to this. Waymo, which is one of Tesla's biggest competitors in the US, which is one of the leading autonomous vehicle competitors, which had autonomous taxi tests happening in Pittsburgh, I think, in Arizona, where there was notably a death and whatever. Anyway, Waymo recently lost its CEO about a week ago, and now it's being reported that Waymo is also losing their CFO and head of automotive partnerships. So essentially, long story short, the company is imploding. Waymo's chief financial officer, Garrett Dwyer, and its head of automotive partnerships and corporate development, Adam Frost, two longtime executives at the autonomous vehicle company, are leaving, departures that come amid some executives shuffling following CEO exit earlier. And their departure was shared internally this week. According to multiple sources, Waymo has confirmed that they are leaving. We are grateful for all they have done for Waymo and wish them all the best. An executive search is underway for a new CFO and no doubt a new CEO and a new head of partnerships. And why not just start all over and start a new company at that point? It seems interesting, to say the least. To be continued, and maybe they've got bigger. Maybe they weren't happy with the progress, and it's owned by Google, essentially, Alphabet. So maybe Alphabet. I can't imagine they're giving up on this project, because this is one of the most important projects for Google in the future. To be this whole future of autonomous vehicles is such an incredibly huge opportunity that I can't imagine they will give that up to Google and Amazon and the others who just VW just entered this space with a headline about 48 hours ago. So I can't imagine Google's going to give up. They must be on the hunt for replacements and even, real leaders in this space. Curious to see who they bring in. And understandably, Apple is rumored to be playing in this space as well, rather covertly. But time will tell. It's a really interesting space, and we'll keep an update on it. Speaking of kind of breaking news updates, this DarkSide ransomware gang that we can't seem to go 30 minutes without sharing news about is back at it again. The DarkSide ransomware gang says it lost control of its servers and money a day after Biden's threat. A day after President Joe Biden said that the U.S. plans to disrupt the hackers behind the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack, the operator of the DarkSide ransomware said the group has lost control of its web servers and some of its funds it made from the ransom payments. And here's a quote from DarkSide itself. A few hours ago, we lost access to the public part of our infrastructure, namely our blog and our payment servers, so they couldn't fully process the ransom payments, says DarkSup, the operator of DarkSide's ransomware, in a post spotted by recorded future threat intelligence analyst Dmitry Smilenyets. Now the servers are unavailable via SSH and the hosting panels are blocked, said the DarkSide operator. This is almost becoming a comedy show.
So they lost.
Is that a joke
like
from
Wow, they sound like a real corporation now.
Yeah, they sound like real top-notch geniuses. But if you're being an expert
they're just bluffing, right?
Well, no, I mean being experts at exploiting, and cybersecurity doesn't mean you're experts at payment processing necessarily. So they managed to cajole, the Colonial to cough up a bunch of Bitcoin, $5 million in Bitcoin, but the payment gateways are magically closing as the payments coming across. And I guess everyone's learning some interesting lessons through all of this, no doubt.
Did somebody hack their payment system?
Yes, that's what DarkSide themselves are saying. They've lost control of their website and sort of the payment systems that they had put up to receive the payment. And then President Biden said in a press conference, "We have been in direct communication with Moscow about the imperative and responsible countries to take decisive action against these ransomware networks." So apparently Biden, I would love to see the communication between Biden and Putin about getting control of these ransomware gangs, or else shit's going to hit the motherfucking fan, Putin. So,
the only person that can help us here, Tyler, is Sonali.
Yeah,
But I did,
person who
Tyler,
can help us here.
Tyler, just really quick, I did read that this organization has said that we're not going to hack anything government or I think military.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any difference. Well, they're only going to do this for money against the private enterprises. Yeah. Not that it makes anything better, but that's something I want to share.
Yeah. I mean, Emily did say she was free to go, but then Lucy's gone off and done something else. But I'm really running out of time now, so
yep,
I'm just going to have to go back in and get her.
Yeah. So the FBI.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was unmuted.
That's right. The FBI has made a statement on the compromise of the Colonial Pipeline networks. The FBI confirms that DarkSide ransomware is responsible for the compromise of the Colonial Pipeline. We continue to work with the company and our government partners on the investigation. President Biden's statement also came after the director of the U.S. Counterintelligence and Security Center also said last week that the U.S. intelligence community was likely to respond to the Colonial attack in a disruptive manner. And according to the ransomware operator, DarkSide, no more servers are seized, money is gone. And reached out for comment. A spokesperson for the Justice Department said that the department does not comment on active investigations. And one of the really interesting bits was the DarkSide attribution is a good move for the FBI. This is William Avenia. He fully expects DarkSide to shortly experience the full extent of the DoD precision tactical deterrent capabilities. What a great tweet. I got to retweet this one. So the former director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, his tweet is, "This is so great." Yeah, I'll tweet it right now so you can see it from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account. He says, "DarkSide's attribution is a good move by the FBI. I fully expect DarkSide to shortly experience the full extent of the Department of Defense precision tactical deterrent capabilities."
Brace.
Yes. DarkSide is a criminal organization based in Russia, he says. Let me be clear, such criminal organizations cannot operate from within Russia without at least a tacit approval of the intelligence services of Moscow leadership. Russia is Russia, he says. All CEOs must convene their respective security teams to, at a minimum, identify current vulnerabilities, develop or refresh internal ransomware policies, and execute a tabletop exercise ASAP. Protect what you do, what you make, and what you brand. What a great Twitter thread. I encourage you to read this from William Evanina, former director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center for the U.S. So he no doubt knows what he's talking about. And what a fantastic wording that tweet is. So
that's been the story of the week, Tyler.
That is
been the high water mark, man. It's unbelievable. Like both in laughter and in real stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Funny to watch. Kieran, are you happen to be in the room? Maybe you wanted to comment on this Tether situation, because I noticed you just tweeted about it 16 minutes ago, and the broader implications now that Forbes and others are covering.
Kieran's not here.
He's not. He's tweeting about it to us here in the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, so I assumed he might be in the room. I just liked his comment there. I'll open floor for the moment. Heyman, we do know about Toshiba also being hit by DarkSide. Yeah, and he also is tweeting about the crypto trading platform sued for moving all of its clients' assets into Dogecoin without telling them. That's a great story. You want to do that one, Heyman? Are you here? Heyman?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's basically the U.S. Sorry, I just tweeted the story, so I lost the story. Do you want to go ahead? You have the story in front of you there.
Yeah, I do. It's crypto trading platform is sued for moving all of its clients' assets into Dogecoin without telling them. And I'll retweet you so everyone can see this in the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, which, by the way, it's great seeing everyone follow this account. Also because it does on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday, we do test out what they call Twitter Spaces, which is their clone of Clubhouse, although limited to only 10 speakers, which is one of the primary reasons we don't do it. But I mean, we love everything about Clubhouse, so it's that's why we're working very diligently to encourage the smart minds on this stage to create their own side rooms here in Clubhouse. And it's precisely why in 30 minutes, we're going to hand over to Michael and Victoria to do their third installment of their Love in the Age of AI and VR and cyber stuff, which is a fantastic room that we'll all be going over to in 30 minutes. And then Justin and David are also working on rooms that we can dovetail with, and James hosts fantastic FinTech rooms that we want to coordinate with, and Ben and Amay and others work on their own blockchain and crypto rooms that we now hand over and do deeper dives on, and etc. So we're trying to extend the family and share the momentum in this Tech News Club family and grow the ecosystem of intelligently curious minds here within Clubhouse. So there's a real effort to grow the ecosystem in a very
Hey Tyler,
Hey,
I just found something very, very interesting.
Well, yeah, I know you did because you sent it to me.
I always find other fun ones, but I found one from Asia.
Okay,
How
go
about
ahead.
that?
Go.
Asia's DBS Bank launches Bitcoin custody service. The Singapore-based DBS Group has launched Asia's first bank-backed trust solution for digital assets. DBS Group's private banking arm is now offering trust services for Bitcoin and several other cryptocurrencies. The offering will help wealthy clients to include crypto in succession plans. DBS Group is Southeast Asia's largest bank, announced Friday that its private banking arm offers crypto trust services, which means high net worth customers can now store Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, XRP within the bank.
Thank you for that. I've got you. By the way,
ask a question?
Yeah, but before you do, I want to share just a really great article I just tweeted from Harry from South China Morning Post, which me and Leon, it's we both might be one of our favorite publications.
Here to
the
that.
Best.
Yeah, they did a great article just now that Harry sent in, and I just retweeted from the Tech News Around the World Twitter account. And the headline is Taiwan's gigabyte technology, which makes laptops and stuff, faces a boycott in mainland China now after mocking the low quality of manufacturing in mainland China. And the real important bit is the Taiwan-based computer hardware company promoted its products as Taiwan-made, implying that Taiwan-made products are superior. And so the laptop advertisement was called out by the youth wing of the Communist Party in China as being anti-Chinese, and so now they are facing a boycott in mainland China after mocking the low quality of manufacturing on the mainland. So the tension rising between Taiwan and mainland China now that this hardware manufacturer is promoting their goods as Taiwan made, which implies that it's better than mainland China, etc. So interesting cultural escalation between the Taiwan and the mainland Chinese there. But
since we are back into China, can I share my headlines now?
Go ahead, Leon.
It's just like a Taiwan, what I just shared. Taiwan, China also fun. That's a lot of fun. Anyway, you can spend the whole night. But for people who are probably get a crash yesterday about Alibaba, Baba crashed badly yesterday due to the pretty underperformed the earning. Actually, yeah, there are some good news also from South China Morning Post. So this is kind of an article Ted already sent to you. They said actually Alibaba right now is doing long-term investment and try to really diversify their future business. So, that's something I think could be interesting.
But Leon,
That could be.
if I understand correctly, that Alibaba really the reason they are reporting bad numbers is because of the 2.8 billion dollar fine that they received, and of course that means they're having a bad quarter. But if they had not had the big fine, then I imagine it would have been a much better quarter. Essentially, I mean fundamentally the business is still very strong, but when you have a very large fine, that can, of course, you're going to have weak numbers for the quarter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I think right now when people are, obviously the reason people get into like China-based tech company, because somehow they kind of, a lot of them, I don't think they really understand the fundamentals of those companies. For example, a lot of investors, yesterday I was on the Investor Daily. I try to like share with people, if you look at China, don't think of China as a government, like a CCP government. It's a China company, and Alibaba is a subsidiary of this company. That's how you should look at this.
Yeah, that's a great
And
point. I agree with that.
If you don't get this right, you totally misunderstood how to look at the fundamental of the Chinese company.
Right.
Oftentimes, some people like challenge me and say, how about Jack Ma? How about human rights? You got absolutely wrong. Jack Ma, you should think Jack Ma were a CEO of a subsidiary of a China company, and he didn't do a good job.
That's the best explanation I have heard of how to understand that.
And he didn't do a good job. Why is that? Because what he planned to do, I mean, I'll share with you why Ant Finance was a kind of a disciplined.
Yep.
Everyone know if you are in finance, like there's a systematic risk, like JP Morgan, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, because for those big those like a mega bank, if they fail, they drag the whole system to a toilet.
Right.
That's why they have to be heavily regulated.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what the market cap could be for Ant Finance? It's over 300 billion US dollars, which is bigger than JP Morgan. If that's the case, why you are not expecting Ant Finance get heavily regulated? There's no freaking way.
Well, I got to share a headline about the financial regulation news that's breaking right now in Taiwan. Taiwan regulator imposed biggest ever domestic fine on their leading bank. Taiwan's Financial Supervisory Commission has fined Citibank Taiwan and DBS Bank Taiwan for breaches in the country's anti-money laundering regulations. So it's just to add to that point. But back to your point about how to perceive, the Jack Ma issue, and I like the way that you frame it. But I'm wondering, what you put a really interesting thought in my mind with the way that you framed it. Ben wanted to jump in. Ben, what was your question?
I don't know if Ben's going to jump in, but I just wanted to refer to your earlier laptop reference on defective quality from it being Chinese. So if you remember in the 80s, made in Taiwan was synonymous with bad quality. And if you go back in history, the famous comedian Lucille Ball in the U.S., she was made a joke when they gave her as a birthday present a product that was made in Japan. So there's always an evolution when it comes to quality in a lot of these industrializing countries.
Sure. I remember. I remembered my question, Leon. But here's the question: do you think that Jack Ma was testing to see who really was in control? Like if he was a special exception, like he's like the Elon Musk of China, like he can do whatever he wants. Do you think he felt that way about himself, and maybe he was like this golden child that was able to test the powers, like he felt he was above, being controlled?
I don't know. I cannot speculate. But one thing I can tell you, my grandparent company, Fusan International, I would say 5 or 10 years back, is one of the best company in China as well as good as Alibaba. If you go back in terms of market cap. So actually, my big boss, well, probably one of the first, got to ask and have a tea with the central government. We learned a lesson. We stay low. We do our things. But I think Jack Ma did not learn from his big brother. Sometimes, when you have too much money, you feel like you like Elon Musk, right? He think he can do whatever he like.
Yep.
I mean, go back to Elon Musk, like what he did. I don't care what he said.
Yeah.
But what he did from Wall Street point of view in terms of Bitcoin is a classic pump and dump.
Right.
From my point of view.
Yeah.
Doge, no question asked. But why people
US
have
government,
a problem with that?
Yeah, Dogecoin as well. By the way, I want
to. The U.S.
But why he's like a fan still defend him?
Yeah,
I mean, come on, guys.
Hey, listen to this though. Amay and I had a very long chat today on the phone. Amay, do you want to share what you shared with me about Elon and Dogecoin?
Sure. I mean, I could go
just
down
just give him a 1 minute appetizer, because you need to do a whole separate room on that. That's like
I actually would love to do
sorry. I mean, before start, I always have this kind of weird profile. Like your eyes is like emitting those like red lights. What does that mean? Especially in like a cryptocurrency room.
Yo, did you just put your phone under a washing machine? What is that?
She has to make sure there's no bugs on it, because she's about to drop some crazy news. Yeah.
No, actually, I have like literally either the headset or I use a speaker, but sometimes we never know which one's going to work. These are just crazy Apple phones. They're just a hot mess. Anyways, I don't want to go super, super crazy down the rabbit hole, but Tyler, we need to do a room on this.
Yes.
Because it could be so fascinating.
But just give them the trailer for the room. Yeah.
Okay, well, the trailer for the room is that while everyone's looking at Elon Musk and kind of thinking he's this like arrogant billionaire, there's a unique aspect of Dogecoin that is it's going deeper into the fact that it could be used as an interplanetary currency system. And he actually it's looking, when I dive deeper and deeper and deeper, that he's actually looking to use Dogecoin in how people will use it as a currency as he introduces SpaceX and interplanetary exploration, which means he's actually building a currency system that could go into interspatial orbit, which is wild as hell. But if I shared some links with Tyler earlier today, and he's actually engaging with some NASA astronaut folks, lead engineers, pretty badass folks with some really heavy brains, to get this ready for not going to the moon, but to go to Mars.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I like it.
Yeah, I know.
Michael, do the room with me. Michael, you and Tyler will do the room.
That's just the trailer.
To the moon and Mars. I like it.
I like it too.
Wild.
But Michael, I mean, you haven't answered my simple question. Why like a lot of users have this red eyes or like blue eyes or like green eyes? What's that?
It basically means that from the Bitcoin space, and they would be called Bitcoin maximalists as well, that they believe and support that Bitcoin itself will go to 100,000 by this summer.
So check this. So to repeat Ami's point here, she sent me some links. We talked about it in depth. There was some findings that Elon is now rumored to be working with some of the, the architects behind Dogecoin. And it's now been tied to
Geometric Space Corporation in Canada.
Right. It's now been tied to specific names who have incredibly strong ties to NASA and space exploration, specifically to this the Dogecoin as a potential use case for the currency of Mars. And so when people say, when we say interplanetary in the case of Elon, we know very clearly which planet we're talking about first. So my point is, and it's always been joked about, Elon's going to make Bitcoin the currency for Mars. Well,
to the moon, he say.
But they also say Dogecoin to the moon. But now what we're talking about is Dogecoin to Mars. That's
what's also really.
Sorry, another question.
Is I have sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so another question for you. I mean, specifically, since the Asians likely going to be richer than the, let's say, Western people, Why Dogecoin? Why not a Shiba Inu? That's something we
Well,
pick.
actually,
We
I'd
liked
love
that's
to
it.
so
hear. I'd
funny
love to
that you
hear.
would say that. That's so
I
funny
would
you would
go for
say
Shiba
that.
Inu. Elon said that he would like to buy a Shiba Inu just for fun.
Okay,
That
so
dog
I'd
is
love
not
to hear.
cheap
But
like
hang
others.
on. We got to stop. Oh, back at the end of the boxing round here.
let me roll it. Let me roll it back for a second because it's SpaceX Falcon 9 is the name of the project. And to be very transparent, I have a friend in Vermont who's 22 who actually purchased. She actually did pay in Dogecoin to get access to SpaceX. So this is like really naughty, and it's going to launch tentatively. SpaceX Falcon 9 ride share is going to happen on June 1st, 2022 at 6 p.m.
And they're accepting Dogecoin as a payment system.
Correct. They already have. That's the wildest thing because here's the thing. It creates utility for Dogecoin. The coin that everyone said was a meme, it creates utility for it now. Because now people will hold on to it because they know they could get onto SpaceX as the usage of that coin. So it's very, very interesting what just happened.
He's literally taking Dogecoin beyond the moon to
Into
Mars.
space.
Tyler,
Yep.
I
can
now
I?
I
know
get it.
So,
I
why
get. I get it now.
Tyler, I'd love to hear Raj's technical feedback on this because he really knows this stuff.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm really happy you guys are talking about Doge and the geometric energy systems. So if you look at the press release from Geometric Energy Systems, Geometric Energy Corporation, GEC, this is dated May 9th. They talk about paying for the SpaceX mission called Moon 1 with Doge. And the whole purpose of the mission is to drop a souvenir of the Dogecoin, whatever little emblem, little like a piece of chocolate, like disc-shaped thing, right? That we see as the Bitcoin souvenir or something. The whole purpose of this thing is to drop one little piece of material onto the moon. There is no business, scientific, engineering, or any other purpose to this. This is essentially is a PR stunt, and these two people, Sam Reed and I believe Walter Reed, who have signed the press release, they have no background in space exploration or any kind of a serious engineering or scientific work. And when you see a press release with two same last names, that's always an interesting thing because
Wait a
it's
second, Raj.
tiny entity.
Samuel Reed is the chief executive officer of Geometric Space.ca in Canada. He's actually a mathematician and advanced technology entrepreneur. So maybe we're not talking about the same gentleman.
It is the same person. There is practically nothing for them to show for their achievements and accomplishments if you actually look into it.
And Vamsi Reddy?
Sorry?
And what about Vamsi Reddy, the chief technology officer who actually provides consultation to them? And
I can look into that more. I haven't seen his name prominently in this discussion about Doge and Moon and SpaceX, but I can look into that. But so far, as far as I can tell, SpaceX was paid Doge at some point for this moon mission. It's not clear from the press release actually. Maybe they are going to pay, but if there has been a payment made, when was it made? Was it made like a year ago? Because that would be very interesting because that Doge is now worth, many, many times more. So, Elon is pumping Doge. He's not stupid enough to have acquired a lot of it and then started pumping it. But, if he has a partner who's willing to pay for some kind of a activity, which this moon mission fits very perfectly. That makes sense because now SpaceX gets funded for its work, which it may have been having difficulties getting funded. Who knows? But the interesting thing is that Doge is a proof of work coin. If it becomes big like Bitcoin, guess what's going to happen? Miners are going to spend tremendous amount of energy mining Doge. So you're back to square one. And this now Elon's latest tweet, I guess the one from yesterday, talks about improving efficiency and whatnot. So that means they're going to proof of stake. Proof of stake is where you don't spend energy, you literally vote according to how many tokens you already hold. So it's like the richest holders determining who's going to get the next block reward. And that's very much compatible with the fiat system, and that was actually literally confirmed by Christine Lagarde yesterday when she spoke about
Ethereum going to proof of stake, which he says is very compatible with the central banks. So we kind of have a picture emerging where there is a pressure on these cryptocurrencies to go to proof of stake. Doge is funding a goofy mission to the moon to drop a piece of material on the moon, and
Raj,
Elon is
I
funding
have a
it.
question
Well
for
So
said,
this
you.
has
Raj.
nothing to do with seven. This has nothing to do with 7-Eleven plans to open on the moon and Mars.
No, by the way, this is
It
so
is to
funny. I
fund
have
his
to.
project, right,
No, no.
Raj?
I want to share one saying. I will do first in English, then in Chinese, just for the sake of fun. I think if you compare, like if Elon is we have a saying in Chinese of like how to say gangsters not really scary, but the gangster with the education is really scary. So in Chinese like 流氓不可怕，就怕流氓有文化. That's pretty much.
So
Culture.
really, I mean, just to look at the available facts. I'm not trying to ascribe some ulterior motive to Elon. I'm not trying to sort of buy into his fantasy of going to Mars. By the way, anyone who's interested in cryptocurrencies and space, the only substantial work that I know of is by Dhruv Patel from Unchained Capital. He has done a bunch of work which is available on the web under the title Bitcoin Astronomy. So it's interesting if you want to get some technical details. But coming back, if you just look at the available facts and the parties involved, the whole thing is really complicated, but really also suspicious, because why Doge? Why not design a new cryptocurrency? And when did Geometric Energy Corporation start getting involved in it? When did they start accumulating Doge? I mean, the whole idea of funding a moon mission could be to pump Doge, and then they dump it on the market. Who knows? I think some really energetic investigative journalists need to look deeper into this stuff.
Actually, Raj, there are a few pieces of deeper hardware technical information, and I'm happy to share where those are located, because that's what Tyler and I were talking about for about 2 hours, because it is heavily technical that even I joked around and said that Raj, other people would be able to read this
She
technical
did say
specs,
that.
because you're absolutely Geometric Space Corporation was created recently. It's a subsidiary of GEC. And that's what's interesting, because the GEC is the research and development firm that was founded in 2015, but GSC is recently formed. And they're the ones that are actually counting down to launch SpaceX. So I don't necessarily mean from a perspective of strategy and releasing a product. If I put my FMCG hat on, he's still delivering a product. So at the end of the day, SpaceX is still technically a product. How he chooses to deliver this product from a strategic manner is his choice, regardless if it's him or anyone else. But I would love to know your thoughts on these super heavy, crazy technical documents that refer to
Yes.
the actual hardware that's going there, not the coin,
Please,
the
please.
hardware.
Please share it with me, because the
Yeah,
press
I
release
will, because
mentions
I'm
literally
curious.
nothing technical.
I'm super curious because it has to do with satellite hardware. That's why I said this is super, super trippy. Has to do with
Sure.
satellite hardware.
I'll be happy to take a look, and I
Awesome.
know people who are even better than me at analyzing this
Totally.
stuff.
We would
And
love it, actually.
okay,
So just another thing, what do you think? They expected a huge loss of sales of Tesla's car in China play a role. Obviously, they are having a really bad time in China. I think their quarterly earning going to be pretty bad, to be honest with you. That's my speculation.
I
Has there
don't
been
think
anything?
so.
You don't think so? Okay.
No,
What's your
I
thought?
am pretty sure that their production of their cars in China are growing exponentially. Their Model Y is most popular car in China right now.
Not right now, actually. You know what happened is the Chinese
They
government,
they pre-sold a whole quarter of the
yeah,
cars,
I
so
understand.
they can sell whatever they are producing. They don't have problem with the demand. They have problem to produce enough cars to satisfy the market. So
Milos, can you go ahead and share your Tesla headline you sent from Reuters? about the batteries?
Yeah. So when we are in this in the subject of the Tesla and the cars, Tesla made another deal with another battery supplier with a company called Eve Energy, Chinese company. So it's their second Chinese supplier of the batteries. Basically, right now they have four major suppliers of the batteries, and every battery what Tesla is buying, uh, it's less battery what the other car manufacturers are able to buy, because there is so basically, Tesla is sucking the batteries out of the market. They made an agreement with the four battery as of today with the four major battery suppliers, and two of them are Chinese, CATL and Eve Energy, and both of the Chinese are producing LFP batteries. So basically, those batteries are going to the Shanghai plant for the production of Model Y and Model 3s.
And Milos, about the batteries in China. This article?
That's the article. That's what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
EVA and the Tesla agreement with EVA Energy about supply of the batteries for the Chinese giga plant in the Shanghai.
Right.
So what I'm saying that Tesla is basically telling to all their suppliers, we are going to buy all the batteries, whatever you can produce for us. Up to today, it was three battery suppliers, Panasonic, LG Chem, and CATL, three largest one in the world. Yeah. And today they expanded to number four, which is EVA Energy. And they are telling them, we're going to buy all the batteries for next 10 years, what you can produce. Just sell to us for the acceptable price. On top of that, we will produce our own battery. Tesla is not producing batteries yet. So, because you are not able to sell us so much batteries, how much we need.
Yep.
So basically, it's big news that the Tesla made the deal with another battery supplier.
Yeah.
By the way, Milos, did you see the news article on the Harvard research where they came out with a new lithium metal and it might have, yeah.
Obviously,
so Milos,
those kind of news. I will answer first this article. What whoever asked about me about this article. So this article, those kind of the news over the last 120 years, what we have battery, there are many breakthrough technologies, but they never materialize. So I suspect that will be another one which will never materialize.
Yep.
Manos, I just found the latest number of sales of Tesla.
Okay.
So actually,
hold on.
Like in March.
Hold on 1 second. We've got a limited number of minutes left, and I don't have enough minutes for everything we need to do. So please hold that thought, Leon.
Sure.
Kai, happy birthday, first of all. And I know that many of us want to just express a very
happy.
He's
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Kai.
Happy birthday, Kai.
Happy birthday.
You rock, man.
Yep.
Thank you.
And
happy birthday.
Do you happen to have a headline that you would like to share for your birthday?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Taylor and Carl and Cheryl and all of you. This is one of my favorite room, guys. And I have been quietly listening to all the news because I was obviously having my birthday off as usual, and I just finished that and came home. Yeah, it is my birthday. Really, really happy. Grateful for my mom who did the job, and it was hard, but yeah, I hope I have pleased her with with the way it turns out. I am going to be 48. I am, and on this day, there's also a piece of news I want to share. I think for the peace and love for humanity. So the news is that China is about to try to actually land a rover onto the Mars. So the mission is called Tianwen number 1, which actually translated to English as asking the sky. So the first mission. So it is the first mission for China to orbit the red planet. And they're going to send out a rover called Zhurong. So Zhurong actually comes from it's an ancient Chinese legend on a harrowing descent to the surface hopefully, if this achieved a successful soft landing, I think it's a great achievement for mankind, and for all of us, and hopefully that can support Elon Musk's idea about the future living on Mars, because we're going to well, the Chinese is going to collect more data, and lots of them will be made available to all of us. They couldn't manage to land it on my birthday, but they're going to land it tomorrow on 15. So I thought as soon as I turn to 48, hopefully, let's pray for a successful landing there. And yes, so that is the news I want to share, and I just want to tell all of you that there's no greater joy for me than to play golf and spend my birthday together with all of you lovely souls. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kai.
Happy birthday.
And very happy
Thank
birthday,
you,
man.
thank you.
By the
Happy
way,
birthday,
that
Ben.
Mars
Thank
rover,
you.
that
How
Mars
young are you,
rover's
Kai?
translation should be
48.
asking heaven.
Cheryl, you were listening.
Speaking
So I
of,
would just say
yeah, I just got to rush here because we have 4 minutes before Michael starts and Victoria do their room. So 2 more headlines in the next 4 minutes. Russia to send film crew and Japanese billionaire to space. And the Russia said Thursday it would send an actress and a director into space to make the first feature film in the cosmos, and also deliver an eccentric Japanese billionaire to the International Space Station. Moscow is seeking to boost its embattled space program, which has stagnated since the collapse of the Soviet Union and been overtaken by U.S. tech billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX. The Russian space agency announced the film project after NASA confirmed last year it was teaming up with U.S. action star Tom Cruise to make a movie on the ISS, International Space Station. So that's a double news headline for you, because I had no idea that NASA was working with Tom Cruise on the International Space Station. And then one last article on the topic of batteries, as we were. Somebody in the audience from Sweden, my apologies for, it was a while ago, so I'll have to find the name, sent an article from Chalmers University, one of Sweden's leading tech universities, that they've had a big breakthrough for massless energy storage. Have produced a structural battery that performs 10 times better than all previous versions. It contains carbon fiber that serves simultaneously as an electrode, a conductor, and a load-bearing material. The latest research breakthrough paves the way for essentially massless energy storage in vehicles and other technologies, namely airplanes, because of this new technology would make the batteries much, much, much lighter, essentially, and so that it could be used to bring birth to electric airplanes. So I will retweet this one out as well, and thank you to the kind Swedish person who shared that with us. Again, my apologies for losing your name, but there you have it. Thank you to everybody, and happy birthday to Kai. We're going to hand it over here because, as I said, Michael and Victoria are going to do their third installment. And go ahead and jump over there if you would, guys, and get that room started. And you can find it by clicking on the title of this room, where you will see the Tech News Club, which you should follow, and where you will see Digital Love, Dating and Sex in VR AR, which Michael and Victoria are hosting, and me and Cal and everyone else will be over there, so we'll see you there. And
it's opened up.
If you scroll down, you'll notice that there's Tech News Canada coming up on the 18th with Heyman and Norm. And then you have the MedTech News with Ben and Dr. Matt and Heyman and others. And then on Wednesday, you've got the Wednesday Blockchain News with Ben and Donna and Rajwinder and others. And then on Thursday, you've got the AI News with Sid, who was here earlier, and Jean-Francois and Sahir and Ben and Dave and all the other brilliant AI minds here in Clubhouse. So do check out the calendar, do follow the club, and as usual, it was an absolute pleasure. And thanks for everyone for joining. Happy birthday, Kai, and we will see you over there at the Digital Love, Dating, and Sex in VR AR room. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody.